Party lines to the budget unveiled on Wednesday by Britain's Chancellor. Rishi Sunak said the economy is recovering from COVID-19 faster than expected. He pledged £150 billion of fresh investment in a bid to help revive the economy. Lucy Fraser is a lawmaker with the country's governing Conservative Party.
We are going to invest, but we're going to invest very carefully and very strategically in the things that will grow our economy.
And James Murray is a lawmaker with the opposition Labour Party.
Well, we have to look at the budget in front of us and give our honest reaction. My honest reaction to it, sitting there today, was that the budget really shows how out of touch the Chancellor and his priorities are.
Poland must pay daily fines of over €1 million over controversial reforms to its judiciary. The sanctions have been ordered by the European Union's top court. From FSN's Europe desk in Brussels, Lucy Hoff reports.
Imposing daily fines in excess of €1 million is the final and most drastic step the European Court of Justice could have taken. The EU's executive says reforms conducted in Poland are a threat to judicial independence and subject the country's judges to political control. The sanctions will be deducted from the EU funds that Poland periodically receives. But last week, Polish Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki said the country would not be intimidated.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Today, Grandparents for Climate Action. It's a British pressure group of activists vowing to make their voices heard at the upcoming COP26 Climate Change Summit in Glasgow. With the UN warning only yesterday that the world is still flirting with climate change disaster, much of the focus remains on young activists like Greta Thunberg. But Nancy Lindisfarne, a grandparent campaigning for change, says she'll be at COP26 as well.
What we're seeing now is this enormous kind of energy that is coming, of course, from the young, from Greta, from others, but also the evident increasing urgency about the climate. California, the West Coast is burning, the Arctic ice is melting. So suddenly there's an energy again. And one of the things that I'm going to do is go to the COP with the idea of reviving, I suppose, I hope across the country, the kind of action that we had 5 years ago to pick us up so that we can actually join the front lines.
She says the failure of the Paris Climate Change Accords to deliver real progress has reignited impetus among an older generation of activists who are demanding change. And hers is just one of several groups mobilising grandparents and retirees who want to protect the climate for future generations. The main news again. Police in New Mexico say there could have been as many as 500 rounds of ammunition on the set of the film Rust, where Alec Baldwin accidentally killed cinematographer Helena Hutchins. Top US military commander General Mark Milley says China's test of a hypersonic weapon is very concerning, and the EU's top court has ordered Poland to pay fines of over €1 million a day over controversial reforms to its judiciary. And that is the latest feature story news. Simon Marks reporting.
While waiting to interview for a web consultant position with local marketing firm Bizco, applicant Ryan Ehrlich told Onion reporters he wasn't entirely sure he was dynamic enough for his prospective employer.
When I first saw that the agency was looking for a leader willing to contribute as a valued member of the team, I thought it was the perfect fit. But the more I think about it, the less I'm sure I'm actually an energetic self-starter. I mean, I think I'm a versatile independent thinker, but honestly, how do you even know for sure?
Ehrlich, who found Bizco's online job posting earlier this week, went on to express doubts that he truly possesses the forward-thinking instincts and next-generation idea assets required to work with the fast-paced marketing firm's team of self-starters.
Can I reimagine a brand for a digital landscape? Sure, but do I really have the energy, skills, enthusiasm, and passion to be a part of this dynamic, growth-oriented company? I just don't know. Oh God, who am I kidding? There's no way I'm on the cutting edge.
This is the Onion News Network. Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live, where you can call in, talk about whatever is important to you. 603-283-6160 is the call-in line if you'd like to weigh in with your thoughts and opinions. That's 603-283-6160. And with you tonight, it's Aria.
And Nikki.
And man, I tend to avoid talking about anything related to trans stuff as much as I can, but this story got brought to my attention by someone who was saying that the BBC is being transphobic in their take on this, and I'm not ready yet to get into it, but it's definitely worth talking about, and I'm looking forward to it. But I want to start with something happier, because a local satanic organization has convinced a school district in Delaware County that its dress code was discriminatory against Satanists. Once I saw that, I had to see the article. So Joseph Rose is the founder of a local organization called Satanic Delco, one that I've absolutely never heard of. Says that fellow Satanists with children attending schools within the Rose Tree Media School District, which I've also never heard of, made him aware of the verbiage in the dress code banning any clothing or gear that are, quote, satanic in nature. Now, it doesn't sound like this is a religious school. It's just a public school district saying you can't have clothing that is satanic in nature.
It would maybe make sense to me if it was like a Catholic school or something like that, but if it's just a random public school district, I don't see why they wouldn't let kids wear something.
I don't either, but that was evidently their policy. Rose said the idea that a public school would allow religious expression in school, but choose to single out and prohibit the expression of one specific religion, obviously seemed like a problem for us. Well, it's obviously a violation of the First Amendment. They're a public school. They can't say, hey, you can't have this one particular religious emblem on your clothing. It took about a month of consistent emails and phone calls. Man, this dude must be bored. And phone calls to the district before the superintendent sent out an announcement reading in part, although we have had no complaints or concerns brought forward by any student, parent, or resident, we will remove this language from our current dress code information in the student handbook. So the parents themselves didn't do that. They just contacted Joseph Rose, who did it evidently consistently, emailing and calling daily on their behalf, rather than, requiring the students to do it, because the students are already being discriminated against, told they can't wear what they want to wear. So yeah. I don't blame this guy at all for being like, hey, look, no, you don't make yourself more of a target. I'll take care of this for you.
Well, and this happens a lot to Satanists. They kind of, Satanism always gets singled out as being like the one religion that you're not allowed to be, basically, especially in public schools. A lot of public schools probably have that verbiage in their handbooks or whatever.
Right, and it's because they get their understanding of Satanism from, like, Hollywood.
Yeah, or, like, Christians.
Or Christians. But Christians sort of get theirs from Hollywood as well.
Yeah,
so it just sort of bleeds out from there. But I've been watching a lot of horror movies this month, like I do every October, and I swear, satanic ritual abuse is like a catchphrase in Hollywood. At least 10 of the movies I've seen have used that exact phrase no less than 20 times throughout the movie. Just satanic ritual abuse, satanic ritual abuse.
Yeah.
And a few of them handle it really well, talking about how, there was just this hysteria about satanic ritual abuse, but the majority of them just take it seriously and run with it, and of course that creates the perception in the minds of people. That's their only exposure to what a Satanist is what Hollywood tells them it is.
Most of these people have no clue what Satanism is about or what a Satanist is. They just think, oh, Satan, the devil, it must be bad.
And that's exactly what this woman says. Lisa Cutrafello of Clifton Heights. I wouldn't want a satanic or cultish anything on clothing in schools. But it's obviously a free speech issue. No, she goes on. No, a different person goes on. It's like a free speech issue. Are they going to allow Nazis to be able to put symbols on kids' shirts and send them to school? Asked Donna Willis of Media. I guess that's a place in the school district.
I mean, I would say that those are two very different things.
Yes, one is a symbol of white supremacy and fascism and, the Holocaust and other horrific things. And the other is a symbol of religious freedom, freedom of expression.
This just really shows her misunderstanding of Satanism.
It absolutely does. It just sort of raises awareness, said Joseph Rose, for what Satanists are, what we're not, and maybe helps empower us a little when we have to reach out to the next high school, which I'm doing. So apparently There are multiple high schools that are doing this that he's having to reach out to. I mean, obviously, Satanists are not what the media makes them out to be, and that's part of the West Memphis 3. But for people who think that it's not that big of a deal what people think Satanists actually are, considering how much of a minority we are, but there was this kid in West Memphis, Arkansas, who was murdered.
Wow.
And because these 3 goth Satanist kids who listen to Marilyn Manson and stuff happen to know him, I don't know all of the details anymore at this point, but they were called the West Memphis 3, and they spent a lot of time in prison solely because they were goth kids. And that was how the police interpreted it. They're like, oh no, this was satanic cultism. And this was at the height of the satanic panic, and because of that, they falsified evidence, they lied.
So what happened? This kid got murdered and they blamed it on the goth Satanist kids?
Yes.
Okay.
And I don't remember all of the details here. It's a huge saga, and it goes back years. I mean, Disturbed even wrote a song called 3 that is about this very topic, and that's what made me aware of the issue in the first place. But it absolutely happened. Someone got murdered, and the nearby Satanists got blamed because of the satanic panic that was, thriving in the 80s and 90s. So awareness about what Satanists actually are is definitely a good thing. According to Satanic Delco's website, the group does not worship Satan, but rather believes that religion can and should be divorced from superstition. I don't know that it should be divorced from superstition. I certainly agree that it can be. But if you want a religion that's divorced from superstition, which is kind of what Reformed Satanism is, that's cool. But if other people want a religion that's tied to superstition, I don't necessarily see an issue with that.
Yeah, to each their own, right?
Right. He goes on to say, we do not promote a belief in a personal Satan. To embrace the name Satan is to embrace rational inquiry removed from supernaturalism and archaic tradition-based superstitions. Satanists should actively work to hone critical thinking and exercise reasonable agnosticism in all things. Our beliefs must be malleable to the best current scientific understandings of the material world, never the reverse. Which is largely a statement I agree with. I mean, if that's what one wants to guide them, is scientific understanding of the world, sure. But it's personal liberty above everything else. If another Satanist wants to be guided by a belief in other things other than current scientific understandings, that's also fine. That's their choice to make, how they live their life, what they want to be guided by. And this is why I like the fundamental tenets of the Satanic Temple. There's 7 of them, and they're really misconstrued and obviously misinterpreted by the modern-day Satanic Temple, which is like this hard left progressive organization because Satanism got overtaken by progressive humanists, and all the more reason that the Reformed Satanic Church exists, and they hold themselves to be God, and they should be the ones making decisions for others. But like the 4th tenet is one's body is subject to one's one's own will, and is inviolable. And of course, they don't like that. They like it when it comes to abortion, but when it comes to having to put a vaccine in your body, oh no. Suddenly your body is not just subject to your own will alone, but our will. It supersedes your will. So there's a lot of hypocrisy, but still, this guy is doing good things, and I appreciate that, because all of the kids who want to wear Baphomet t-shirts, there can't really be that many of them in Delaware County, Pennsylvania. But hey, for those kids who want to wear pentagrams and Baphomet t-shirts, now they can finally do that. So kudos to this guy for putting in the work and actually consistently emailing and calling the superintendent in order to get them to reverse this policy.
Did the article say how this guy got involved with doing this?
Yes, fellow Satanists with children that attended schools within the district made him aware of it.
Okay.
And he was like, okay, well, something needs to be done about this, because you're not banning all religions from having clothing or gear there. You're just banning this one particular religion, which obviously is an issue. And hopefully, now more people within the school district, I mean, they're not listening to this guy, though. They're just saying, I don't know. I don't want satanic or cultish imagery.
Yeah.
I just want my kid to be able to wear his cultish cross. What's wrong with that? But maybe I'm wrong here. 603-283-6160. There's more coming up. It's Free Talk Live.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at Bitcoin.com. That's Bitcoin.com.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
Breaking weather news. Belize is sunny and around 82 degrees every day this week.
What's the forecast for your life? If current politics and economic prospects are cramping your freedom, escape to the tropics. ECI Development has affordable second homes for you to own or rent in Belize and other tropical countries. Places with stable governments and growing economies. Secure your freedom now. To find out more, send an email to ftl@ecidevelopment.com.
When Monster Hunter International discovers one of Isaac Newton's wardstones being auctioned off, they decide to steal it and use it to destroy the Chaos God once and for all. But a mysterious thief upends their plan, and it soon becomes a race against time as something much older and infinitely more evil awakens in the jungles of South America. Monster Hunter Bloodlines by New York Times bestselling author Larry Correia and Baen Books. Visit monsterhunternation.com for more.
This is Michael Dean from the Freedom Fiends. I've run websites since 1996 and have used over a dozen web hosts in that time. AgristHosting.com is the only one that hasn't broken my heart. Agrist Hosting's uptime and service is stellar, and their DDoS mitigation is the best I've seen. That's important because if you tell the truth in this world, you'll ruffle feathers. And some people will try dirty tricks to silence your voice. No matter what the haters hit us with, Agrist Hosting keeps our websites online. If you have a mission-critical commercial presence or a world-changing activism site, you cannot tolerate any skullduggery. So go with agristhosting.com. Have a WordPress or blog site, but you're not satisfied with performance or uptime? Or just want raw hosting? Want to pay with Bitcoin? Agrist Hosting specializes in high-performance hosting with personalized service. Go to agristhosting.com and click on the button that says Get Hosted. That's agristhosting.com.
The LRN.FM social media channels have been revamped. We've eliminated Facebook and focused on other platforms like Twitter and Mastodon, the decentralized alternative to Twitter. On our accounts, you'll find posts from multiple LRN.FM show hosts together in one place. Follow us on Twitter at twitter.lrn.fm, or better yet, move to the decentralized Mastodon social media platform at toot.lrn.fm, toot.lrn.fm. I think you'll like it.
My name is Jacob Hornberger. I'm president of the Future of Freedom Foundation, which Congressman Ron Paul awarded for having an outstanding freedom website. Write us at fff@fff.org, and we'll send you a free 3-month subscription to our monthly journal of libertarian essays and our booklet, Economic Liberty in the Constitution, which George Mason University economics professor Walter Williams praised in a recent column. That's fff@fff.org.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live, where you can join us, share your thoughts and opinions. 603-283-6160 if you'd like to do that. That's 603-283-6160. With you tonight, it's Aria.
And Nikki.
And coming up, I am going to be ranting, and I'm sure Nikki will be joining me because apparently it's relatively common for trans women to rape women, and the hardcore progressive LGBT left doesn't seem to get why that's an issue. But before we get into that, there's a story that I want to get into that you have about this school district, or this one particular school that was just being overwhelmed with violence and students fighting one another, and they didn't have these security guards to even deal with that.
Yeah, so there was a violent week at school in a school in Louisiana, that saw 23 students arrested over the span of 3 days. This is Southwood High School, and the parents knew that something needed to change. So
I think what bothers me most about this is that it was an odd number of people arrested, right? Because that means at
Right.
least one person got teamed up on by
Yeah.
two people, and that's never good.
See, I wouldn't even have thought of that, but that's true. That could have been what happened.
I don't know how else it could be an odd number unless
Yeah.
like the kid was fighting himself.
That would be interesting.
Just that bored in class.
Yeah.
I'm going to make
That
this
kid.
more interesting.
So some dads decided to take matters into their own hands. They formed Dads on Duty, a group of about 40 dads who take shifts spending time at the school in Louisiana, greeting students in the morning and helping maintain a positive environment for learning rather than fighting. You know, kind of like what the teachers are supposed to be doing.
Well, also, what the dads are supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
Setting good examples, being friendly, learning the kids, learning the community. I just wish, it's a bunch of dads going to the school to be security, and they didn't even come up with a dad joke for their name.
I know, just Dads on Duty. You guys couldn't have thought of anything better than that. But, you do have a point, though. It is their responsibility to make sure that their kids are decent human beings, that they're nice and kind and not fighting in school. But I think that probably, this is a high school. So that probably should have been established long ago. But it is cool that these guys were able to step in. 40 parents, that's a lot of dads to kind of step up. And, most people don't have the time off of work to be able to work during a school or to volunteer during a school day. So, I don't know, it's interesting. I don't think any other school has ever had anything like this happen.
No, but it sounds like a positive program. And
Yeah, for sure.
Kudos to these dads for seeing a problem and organizing themselves in a way that doesn't involve police or school cops or more security guards or anything like that. It's like, no, we're just going to step up and solve this problem in a peaceful way. They didn't even do anything. They just started greeting other kids and, saying, hey, welcome to school or whatever.
Yeah.
And that solved the problem.
So, and the students say it's working, and the numbers prove it. There hasn't been a single incident on campus since the dads showed up. And though none of the dads have degrees in school counseling or criminal justice, they do have some relevant experience.
Well, you don't really need a degree in criminal justice to, operate within the community. Because I think that's probably the biggest aspect of this. You don't want to fight this kid because you just met his dad and his dad seemed pretty cool or whatever. Or they met your dad and your dad seemed pretty cool. It's a good way of bringing a community together in a peaceful way.
Honestly, I think if they had degrees in criminal justice, it would make it worse.
It probably would, yeah. because then they'd be school cops who were just authority figures and not some random dad.
So I think this probably works a lot better than a typical security guard, and especially a school cop. So,
well, based on what you told me about Sunday, school cops are beyond useless, arresting a 10-year-old girl for drawing a, quote, mean picture of
I don't even
another
think
student.
that was a school cop. I think that was like the town cop that came and arrested this little girl for drawing a mean picture of another classmate. I can't even, it blows my mind.
Yeah, that blows my mind.
It's getting crazy out here, folks. One of the dads said, we're dads. We decided the best people who can take care of our kids are us, which makes sense.
So why didn't they, if they have this much time, why not just take your kid out of public school?
If they have 40 parents willing to step up, wouldn't they just be able to kind of form a homeschooling group? But I also think that maybe I don't believe that I obviously really, really advocate for homeschooling, but I don't believe that every parent is necessarily capable of homeschooling their kids. Nowadays, there's online programs, so you can kind of just do something like that, but I don't think, normally there's a certain point where you realize that kids start to surpass their parents in their knowledge.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think that happens pretty young for some children. Unfortunately, not every adult is educated.
That's a fair point.
I remember asking my parents for help with math homework in high school, and they were like, nope, you're on your own. These X's and Y's, I don't get it.
It's also true that a lot of these dads may just have 30 minutes. They're hanging out at the school between 7:30 and 8 on their way to work or whatever. So they don't have a full day to spend homeschooling their kids. So
and this is in Louisiana, and I think the culture might be a little bit different than it is up here in New Hampshire. Homeschooling's a pretty big thing, especially in the libertarian community.
Sure.
But a lot of people in New Hampshire seem to homeschool their kids and do like more homesteady type stuff. Whereas in Louisiana, it seems like this probably isn't a rural area either. It seems like it might be a city. So that's probably not as big out there as it would be someplace like New Hampshire.
I'm continually shocked by the number of schools here in Keene, New Hampshire, because one of the towns that I lived in when I lived in Mississippi, it had a population about half of Keene's, but it only had the one school.
Yeah.
I mean, 12,000 people, one school. Keene, 22,000, and I don't even know how many schools there are here. There's at least 4 that I can think of, 2 of which are private schools, and there's at least 5 that I can think of, 2 of which are private schools, and probably more than that I don't just know about because I don't have any kids. So
yeah,
school choice is definitely a big thing here. Private schooling, also a very big thing here, because 2 private schools in one little 22,000 population.
A lot.
Yeah. And a lot of homeschooling as well, as you mentioned.
So the article continues to say, now any negative energy that enters the building has to run the gauntlet of good parenting.
That's a good way of putting it. I like that.
I immediately felt a form of safety, one of the students said. We stopped fighting and people started going to class.
Well, you got to do something when you have 23 fights in 3 days.
And 23 students getting arrested over the span of 3 days.
Oh, that's right, 23 students.
Crazy.
Yeah.
I know there's probably more fights than that.
That's true.
Yeah, that's insane. See, I went to like a preppy high school kind of, so there were probably like 3 fights over the span of the time I was there. There was nothing like this when I was in high school.
When I was in school, there was about 1 fight a month, I would speculate, but this was right before they started calling the cops on students who were fighting. They just the principal would come or a teacher would come, they would separate them and they would get suspended for 5 days or whatever.
Yeah.
Now, I feel like that was a good thing because it allowed these students to learn some valuable lessons. 1, how to fight, because one day you may be out there on the streets and you may have to actually fight to defend yourself.
Yeah.
It's good to have at least some experience instead of going directly to jail or whatever. But what are your thoughts? Is it a good thing to arrest students for fighting, teenagers for fighting? 603-283-6160. There's more coming up. It's Free Talk Live.
Free Talk Live's video archives have been on LBRY for years. LBRY is an uncensorable, decentralized, blockchain-based media sharing protocol, and we're big fans of it here on Free Talk Live. In 2020, LBRY launched Odysee, a video sharing website to compete with YouTube, and it's really taking off. Now with over 1 million channels, many of whom are disaffected YouTube creators. During YouTube's crackdown for not towing the government line on COVID, the Free Talk Live YouTube channel started receiving strikes and could be completely taken down at any moment. Thankfully, Odysee started offering live streaming, so we're now streaming live every night and posting our video archives permanently to Odysee. You can watch live or anytime on our Odysee channel by visiting video.freetalklive.com. If you want to go all in, download the desktop app at lbry.com, and then every video archive you watch, you'll help seed and keep it online forever. At minimum, we ask you visit video.freetalklive.com and follow us on Odysee today. video.freetalklive.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. Prosecutors in New Mexico say they have not ruled out the possibility of criminal charges being filed in connection with the killing of cinematographer Helena Hutchins on the set of the film Rust earlier this month. The actor Alec Baldwin fired the fatal shot after being handed a gun that he believed contained only blanks. But police say they think there were as many as 500 rounds of ammunition on the set, some of them real bullets. Sheriff Adam Mendoza says the investigation continues into the projectile that killed the filmmaker.
We suspect that there was other live rounds that were found on the set. If the sheriff's office determines during our investigation a crime has occurred and probable cause exists, an arrest or arrests will be made and charges will be filed.
Top U.S. military commander General Mark Milley says China's testing of a hypersonic weapon is very concerning.
It's a very significant technological event that occurred, or test that occurred by the Chinese, and it has all of our attention.
The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff told Bloomberg TV the U.S. reaction was similar to the moment America realized the USSR had an advantage in the 1950s space race.
What we saw was a very significant event of a test of a hypersonic weapon system. And it is very concerning. I think I saw in some of the newspapers they used the term Sputnik moment. I don't know if it's quite a Sputnik moment, but I think it's very close to that.
Reaction has split along party lines to the budget unveiled on Wednesday by Britain's Chancellor. Rishi Sunak said the economy is recovering from COVID-19 faster than expected. He pledged £150 billion of fresh investment in a bid to help revive the economy. Lucy Fraser is a lawmaker with the country's governing Conservative Party.
We are going to invest, but we're going to invest very carefully and very strategically in the things that will grow our economy.
And James Murray is a lawmaker with the opposition Labour Party.
Well, we have to look at the budget in front of us and give our honest reaction. My honest reaction to it, sitting there today, was that the budget really shows how out of touch the Chancellor and his priorities are.
Poland must pay daily fines of over €1 million over controversial reforms to its judiciary. The sanctions have been ordered by the European Union's top court. From FSN's Europe desk in Brussels, Lucy Hoff reports.
Imposing daily fines in excess of €1 million is the final and most drastic step the European Court of Justice could have taken. The EU's executive says reforms conducted in Poland are a threat to judicial independence and subject the country's judges to political control. The sanctions will be deducted from the EU funds that Poland periodically receives, but last week Polish Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki said the country would not be intimidated.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. You can join us, 603-283-6160 if you'd like to do that. That's 603-283-6160. I want to tell you about Bitcoin.com. It is the best place to go to learn about cryptocurrency. Just click Getting Started at the top of the page. Take just a few minutes out of your day to learn about this world-changing, important information. They have a couple of videos there. It just takes you a few minutes, and you can learn the basics of cryptocurrency. You can get in as deeply into it as you want. But all you really need to understand to start is the basics, and you can find that at Bitcoin.com. And if you already know the basics and just want to stay up to date on what's happening in the world of cryptocurrency, news.bitcoin.com has everything you need to stay up to date on all of the news and headlines that are relevant to you. That's news.bitcoin.com. Now, the headline for this article is, "We're being pressured into sex by some trans women." Well, without even getting into the article, I already am bothered by it because being pressured into sex is rape.
Yeah.
No matter how people slice it.
It doesn't matter if you're a man, woman, trans, cis, whatever you are, it's not cool.
But there's so much to unpack in this story that let's start. Let's just get into what 24-year-old Jenny has to say. She is a lesbian who did not want to have sex with a trans woman. I've had someone saying they would rather kill me than Hitler. They said they would strangle me with a belt if they were in a room with me and Hitler. That was so bizarrely violent just because I won't have sex with trans women. Now, Jenny is a lesbian. She says she is only attracted to women who are biologically female and thus have female parts. She therefore only has sex and relationships with women who are biologically female. Jenny doesn't think this should be controversial, and I have to agree with Jenny, but not everyone agrees. She has been described as transphobic, a genital fetishist, a pervert, and a TERF, a trans-exclusionary radical feminist. Now, this whole perspective here blows my mind. If not wanting to, let's just say, be in a relationship with a trans woman makes someone transphobic, then not wanting to be in a relationship with a woman would make gay men misogynists.
Yeah.
It would make lesbians misandrists. And if that reasoning doesn't sound right to you, it's because the reasoning is wrong. There's nothing about having, I want to say preference, but I want to unpack that later because they're painting this whole thing as it's just a preference.
But it's not really. I mean, her actual sexual orientation. You know, it's who she's attracted to for relationships and for, you know, whatever.
That's exactly it. There's a common argument that they try and use that goes, what if you met a woman in a bar and she's really beautiful and you got on really well and you went home and you discovered that she's a trans woman? Would you just not be interested? Well, yes, because even if someone seems attractive at first, you can go off them, at which I think she means you can be turned off by them. I just don't possess the capacity to be attracted to people who are biologically male, regardless of how they identify, which sounds to me like a reasonable position. The author became aware of this particular issue after writing an article about sex, lies, and legal consent. Several people got in touch with the author to say that there was a huge problem for lesbians who were being pressured to accept the idea that male genitalia can be a female organ. I knew this would be a hugely divisive subject, but the author wanted to find out how widespread the issue was. And judging by this article, it's pretty widespread. Ultimately, it has been difficult to determine the true scale of the problem because there has been little research on this topic, only one survey to my knowledge. However, those affected have told me the pressure comes from a minority of trans women, which is good. It's just a minority doing this. But there's also social pressure here, and we're going to get in that later with lesbians being concerned that if they say no, they don't want to date a trans woman, even though the trans woman herself didn't say something like, hey, if you don't date me, I'm going to call you transphobic. Fear of that happening has caused lesbians to actually date trans women that they didn't actually want to date. So it isn't just individual pressure, it's social pressure.
And that's so toxic. Like, imagine someone, you know, being in a relationship with someone and knowing that they were just in that relationship with you just so they wouldn't seem transphobic. Like, that's worse.
It is. It's a toxic relationship created within a toxic society. Lesbians describe being harassed and silenced if they try to discuss the issue openly. Look, I see that all the time. Anytime you step outside the mainstream trans sphere, you're silenced, you're harassed, or you're bullied. A friend of mine in the UK who happens to be trans wrote an article about Dave Chappelle and pointed out something that I said about it, and people were asking her, why do you remain friends with Arya? She's so transphobic or whatever. And I'm obviously not transphobic, but I stepped outside the narrow thinking that they require of people in order to be, quote, on their side. She says one thing that, this is a tweet she's quoting, is written by a trans woman. One thing every lesbian deals with is straight dudes telling them if only they'd give them a chance, they might realize they're actually straight. Trans activists have that same energy. Let people date who they want to date. If someone rejects you, it's none of your business why. And I tend to agree with that as well. No one owes me an explanation of why they don't want to date me. And if they do give me an explanation, hey, that's their explanation. I can't say, oh no, you're wrong for these reasons. No, they don't want to date me. They're not wrong. It's just all I can do is respect that and carry on with my life.
And it seemed like everybody understands this when it comes to heterosexual relationships or even, you know, most regular gay relationships. But the second you throw like non-binary or trans people into the mix, it just makes people all confused. And it's like, no, the same rules apply. We don't have to make this complicated. If you don't want to date somebody, it doesn't make you transphobic. It just means that this person is a lesbian with a preference for biological females.
Which is totally valid. I mean, that's sort of what I always understood a lesbian to be.
Yeah.
One of the lesbian women that I spoke to, she changed the names to all of these people. Amy told me she experienced verbal abuse from her own girlfriend, a bisexual woman who wanted them to have a threesome with a trans woman. When Amy explained her reasons for not wanting to, her girlfriend became angry. The first thing she did was call me transphobic. She immediately jumped to making me feel guilty about not wanting to sleep with someone. And that's so horrifying that anyone would do that, much less that it seems to be relatively common within the LGBTQ community. She said the trans woman in question had not undergone gender reassignment surgery. I know there is zero possibility for me to be attracted to this person, Amy said. I can hear their male vocal cords. I can see the male jawline. I know under their clothes what there is. These are physical realities that as a woman who likes women, I just can't ignore. Amy said she would feel this way even if a trans woman had undergone surgery, which some opt for, but many don't. Soon afterwards, Amy and her girlfriend split up.
Wow, this made them break up?
Yes.
I mean, that might not be the reason, but it sounds like it.
It sounds like it was probably the reason, and I only hope that Amy was the one who ended the relationship with this toxic human being that tried to guilt-trip her into having sex with someone else.
That's so wrong. And if you think about it, so the lesbian couple, if it was a man that's identifying as a man, and she was like, oh no, I'm not attracted to men, sorry, we wouldn't call her sexist.
No, she wouldn't be a misandrist just for that reason. I mean, it's okay to have a sexual orientation.
Yeah.
But from what she says, it sounds like Amy was the one who got broken up with. And it sounds like it was about this. I remember she was extremely shocked and angry and claimed my views were extremist propaganda and inciting violence towards the trans community, as well as comparing me to far-right groups, she said, which I understand far-right groups to be Nazis. So, and based on someone saying earlier, if I was in a room with you and Hitler, I would strangle you with the belt. I have to imagine she was being called a Nazi by her then girlfriend, and that's probably what led to this breakup. There's more coming up on this, and it gets so much more bizarre, so much worse than what we started out with. 603-283-6160. You can weigh in, 603-283-6160. It's Free Talk Live.
We have some good news. The indictments against Ross Ulbricht in the District of Maryland were dismissed with prejudice, meaning they can never be refiled. This is especially good because those indictments contain the only charge ever made that Ross engaged in murder for hire. This was a serious allegation that Ross Ulbricht denies. It was never prosecuted or ruled on by a jury, but was trumpeted by the federal government and the media as if it were proven fact. The Maryland court held these indictments for almost 5 years, poisoning Ross's case and leaving him under a cloud of unproven allegations. As explained in Ross's appeal to the Supreme Court, the fact that the judge used these allegations to give Ross a draconian sentence of double life without parole violated his Sixth Amendment right to a jury trial. Judges are required to issue sentences based on convictions decided by a jury, not unproven allegations never even charged at trial. Although this is a positive development, the dropped indictment will not set Ross free. Now, a presidential pardon is Ross's only hope of freedom. Sign the petition at freeross.org. freeross.org.
Is oral health important to you? If you don't like your own teeth, fresh breath, or kissing people, then by all means stop listening. Several years ago, I met Jessica Armand, founder and CEO of My Magic Mud, and I became passionate about the product that she created and never want to live without it. It's clinically proven to whiten teeth, but I find it does much more. They want you to love My Magic Mud as much as I do, so they're giving you a money-back guarantee plus 20% off. Go to mymagicmud.com and use coupon code FTL20 at checkout. mymagicmud.com, FTL20.
There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com. Join liberty-minded voluntarists, anarchists, and libertarians from June 27th through July 3rd for the 6th annual Fork Fest at Rogers Campground in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. Fork Fest is a fork of the Porcupine Freedom Festival, which sold out for the first time in 2021. Fork Fest takes place the week after PorcFest, but Fork Fest is decentralized, which means that there's no ticket cost and no one is in charge. All you have to do to join the fun is reserve your camping site, RV site, or motel room with Rogers Campground for June 27th through July 3rd. There's no better place to celebrate Independence Day than around other freedom-loving activists in the Shire. You can find out more at the unofficial website, forkfest.party. You can also connect with other attendees on the ForkFest Telegram and Matrix chat rooms, as well as the ForkFest forum. You can find links to those at forkfest.party. We hope to see you there. forkfest.party. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live listen line, 641-793-0191.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. You can join us, 603-283-6160 if you'd like to weigh in with your thoughts and opinions. That's 603-283-6160. And with you tonight, it's Aria.
And Nikki.
And we're talking about this story here where evidently lesbians are having their sexual identity as lesbians sort of erased by this pressure from sometimes individual trans women. But that seems to be more uncommon. There seems to be a lot more of a sort of social pressure going on here. And that's where Chloe comes in. She felt so pressured that she ended up having sex with a trans woman at university after repeatedly explaining she was not interested. They lived near each other in halls of residence. Chloe had been drinking and does not think she could have given proper consent. She says, I felt very bad for hating every moment because the idea is we are attracted to gender rather than sex. And I did not feel that, and I felt bad for feeling like that.
That is so awful.
That is. And that's not because any particular trans woman ever said, like, hey, if you're not interested in me, you're transphobic. It's because there's some sort of underlying social pressure here that the trans community has to deal with, because stuff like this is clearly happening and it has to be dealt with. Ashamed and embarrassed, she decided not to tell anyone. The language at the time was very much trans women are women. They are always women. Lesbians should date them. And I was like, that's the reason I rejected this person. Does that make me bad? Am I not going to be allowed to be in the LGBTQ community anymore? Look, the LGBTQ community was the one that created those circumstances where you felt pressured into doing this in the first place. Just do like me and don't have anything to do with that community because it's toxic. It's toxic because it's doing stuff like this. Am I going to face repercussions for that? So I didn't tell anyone. Hearing about experiences like these led one lesbian activist to begin researching the topic. Angela Wild is co-founder of Get the L Out, whose members believe the rights of lesbians are being ignored by much of the current LGBTQ movement, which, based on what we're seeing here, I kind of agree with it. She and her fellow activists have demonstrated at Pride marches in the UK, where they have faced opposition. Pride in London accused the group of, quote, bigotry, ignorance, and hatred. Lesbians are still extremely scared to speak because they think they won't be believed because the trans ideology is so silencing everywhere, she said. And look, trans people aren't very common. And Dave Chappelle is Dave Chappelle. But there was a legit possibility, very brief, that the trans community was going to successfully get Dave Chappelle's special kicked off of Netflix.
Yeah.
That's a disproportionate amount of power. To pretend like that level of power being wielded recklessly in ways that they don't intend to pressure lesbians into having sex with trans women can't possibly happen is dangerous.
And it's not just trans women that are doing stuff like this. It's mostly other people speaking on trans women's behalf.
Very true.
Or, trans people in general speaking on their behalf. And we saw that a lot for another example, with the Black Lives Matter thing. It was pretty much a bunch of white girls that were speaking for black people.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, isn't that the whole point? Like, it's their time to talk now. But it's, people just always have to be they have to be the hero.
Well, I don't know any of the trans employees at Netflix who were upset at Dave Chappelle or whatever, but based on how upset they were about Netflix running the latest special, I can't imagine that they wouldn't cry foul if some lesbian told them, no, I'm not interested in you, you're trans. Because that's just sort of the mindset they breed, that they have to be 100% accepted, and that includes by lesbians, or everyone is transphobic.
I also don't know why it's a huge surprise that lesbians might not like penises.
I mean, to me,
that
makes
makes
common sense, right?
Yeah.
And we don't hear about the issue in the other direction, where trans men, which a woman who transitioned to a man, is upset because a gay guy doesn't want to have anything to do with her.
Yeah.
We hear that and we go, well, of course, idiot, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
But when it comes to lesbians, suddenly it doesn't make sense anymore. And I'm like, no, the same rules still apply. And it's not weird, it's normal. Lesbians are still extremely scared to speak because they think they won't be believed. Angela created a questionnaire for lesbians and distributed it via social media, then published the results. She said that of the 80 women who did respond, which is not a very large pool of people, 56% reported being pressured or coerced to accept a trans woman as a partner. While acknowledging the sample may not be representative of the wider lesbian community, she believes it was important to capture their points of views and stories. Well, that's at least more than 40 lesbians who reported being pressured or coerced into having a particular sexual partner. And once again, being pressured or coerced is rape.
Yeah.
It's not sex. As well as experiencing pressure to go on dates or engage in sexual activity with trans women, some of the respondents reported being successfully persuaded to do so. Okay, so it's not at least 40 women who were raped. They just felt pressure. So let me clarify that. I thought I would be called a transphobe, or that it would be wrong of me to turn down a trans woman who wanted to exchange nude pictures, one wrote. Young women feel pressured to sleep with trans women, quote, to prove I am not a TERF.
Oh, God.
Which is a trans-exclusionary radical feminist. And that's a culture created by trans women who created the word TERF to describe cis women. I don't think it was ever meant to apply to lesbians, but obviously I guess there could be some lesbians out there who are like, no, you're a man, but having that and not wanting to have a relationship with you because of the parts of your body are totally different things. One woman reported being targeted in an online group. I was told that homosexuality doesn't exist, and I owed it to my trans sisters to unlearn my, quote, genital confusion so I can enjoy having sex with them.
What?
Yes. And now this isn't an online group, right? Not in the real world, but the fact that it happened at all is horrifying. That is not at all okay. And that's sort of what the argument is here. Homosexuality, she was told that homosexuality doesn't exist, which is counter to everything the LGBT community has been saying for like the last 60 years.
They are very confused. Whoever is doing this is very, very confused. They're complicating everything when really it should just be, I mean, to me and you, we seem to agree that it's pretty obvious.
Yes.
The way like these social rules and social norms should be, like rape it's a pretty like black and white topic, pretty black and white issue.
Well, what I'm noticing here is they're not actually pointing to very many trans women who are saying, hey, no, look, you have to date me or you have to have relations with me or whatever, otherwise you're transphobic. They're just talking about this massive social pressure or other people who may or may not be trans, allies most likely, speaking up and saying, oh no, you can't do this, that's transphobic. Not seeing yet any actual trans women who said, hey, no, you're transphobic if you're not interested in me. One of these women compared going on dates with trans women to so-called conversion therapy, the controversial practice of trying to change someone's sexual orientation. Well, yeah, because it kind of is conversion therapy. I knew I wasn't attracted to her, but internalized the idea that it was because of my trans misogyny.
Oh, God.
And that if I dated them for long enough, I could start to be attracted to them. It was DIY, do-it-yourself, conversion therapy, she wrote. And this is real. This is happening. And it's because trans people have created so much pressure that you have to accept them as just totally normal women. And this is something I've avoided since I transitioned. I'm like, look, I've never actually asked anyone to call me she or her or to call me a woman or whatever. And I said, if you're going to, you still kind of have to put an asterisk there. I'm not just a woman. I'm a trans woman. And I don't care if you recognize that because I recognize that.
Yeah.
That is who I am. Another reported a trans woman physically forcing her to have sex after they went on a date, which by any standard is rape. They threatened to out me as a TERF and risk my job if I refused to sleep with her. I was told I was too young to argue and had been brainwashed by queer theory, so she was a woman, even if every fiber of my being was screaming throughout, so I agreed to go home with her.
Oh my gosh, that is so messed up.
It is, and there's more stories like these, and the article gets into them, and this is an issue that needs to be talked about, and a lot of trans women are speaking up saying, hey, this needs to be talked about. 603-283-6160 if you want to weigh in. That's 603-283-6160. There's more coming up. It's Free Talk Live.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. chat.lrn.fm.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. Prosecutors in New Mexico say they have not ruled out the possibility of criminal charges being filed in connection with the killing of cinematographer Helena Hutchins on the set of the film Rust earlier this month. The actor Alec Baldwin fired the fatal shot after being handed a gun that he believed contained only blanks. But police say they think there were as many as 500 rounds of ammunition on the set, some of them real bullets. Sheriff Adam Mendoza says the investigation continues into the projectile that killed the filmmaker.
We suspect that there was other live rounds that were found on the set. If the sheriff's office determines during our investigation a crime has occurred and probable cause exists, an arrest or arrests will be made and charges will be filed.
Top U.S. military commander General Mark Milley says China's testing of a hypersonic weapon is very concerning.
It's a very significant technological event that occurred, or test that occurred by the Chinese. and it has all of our attention.
The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff told Bloomberg TV the US reaction was similar to the moment America realized the USSR had an advantage in the 1950s space race.
What we saw was a very significant event of a test of a hypersonic weapon system, and it is very concerning. I think I saw in some of the newspapers they used the term Sputnik moment. I don't know if it's quite a Sputnik moment, but I think it's very close to that.
Reaction has split along party lines to the budget unveiled on Wednesday by Britain's Chancellor. Rishi Sunak said the economy is recovering from COVID-19 faster than expected. He pledged £150 billion of fresh investment in a bid to help revive the economy. Lucy Fraser is a lawmaker with the country's governing Conservative Party.
We are going to invest, but we're going to invest very carefully and very strategically in the things that will grow our economy.
And James Murray is a lawmaker with the opposition Labour Party.
Well, we have to look at the budget in front of us and give our honest reaction. My honest reaction to it, sitting there today, was that the budget really shows how out of touch the Chancellor and his priorities are.
Poland must pay daily fines of over €1 million over controversial reforms to its judiciary. The sanctions have been ordered by the European Union's top court. From FSN's Europe desk in Brussels, Lucy Hoff reports.
Imposing daily fines in excess of €1 million is the final and most drastic step the European Court of Justice could have taken. The EU's executive says reforms conducted in Poland are a threat to judicial independence and subject the country's judges to political control. The sanctions will be deducted from the EU funds that Poland periodically receives, but last week Polish Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki said the country would not be intimidated.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Today, Grandparents for Climate Action. It's a British pressure group of activists vowing to make their voices heard at the upcoming COP26 Climate Change Summit in Glasgow. With the UN warning only yesterday that the world is still flirting with climate change disaster, much of the focus remains on young activists like Greta Thunberg. But Nancy Lindisfarne, a grandparent campaigning for change, says she'll be at COP26 as well.
What we're seeing now is this enormous kind of energy that is coming, of course, from the young, from Greta, from others, but also the evident increasing urgency about the climate. California, the West Coast is burning, the Arctic ice is melting. So suddenly there's an energy again. And one of the things that I'm going to do is go to the COP with the idea of reviving, I suppose, I hope across the country, the kind of action that we had 5 years ago to pitch us up so that we can actually join the front lines.
She says the failure of the Paris Climate Change Accords to deliver real progress has reignited impetus among an older generation of activists who are demanding change, and hers is just one of several groups mobilising grandparents and retirees who want to protect the climate for future generations. The main news again. Police in New Mexico say there could have been as many as 500 rounds of ammunition on the set of the film Rust, where Alec Baldwin accidentally killed cinematographer Helena Hutchins. Top US military commander General Mark Milley says China's test of a hypersonic weapon is very concerning, and the EU's top court has ordered Poland to pay fines of over €1 million a day over controversial reforms to its judiciary. And that is the latest feature story news. Simon Marks reporting.
A new report from the Department of Health and Human Services urges Americans to do something, anything at all. According to the study, getting off your ass and doing any sort of physical or mental activity could have positive health effects.
Look, we're not expecting you to go to the gym. That's clearly not happening. Just walk outside for a few blocks and then come back home. You can bring potato chips if that's what it'll take.
For many years, the health department has encouraged Americans to watch less TV, but this report reverses that, saying, quote, watch whatever the hell you want, but at least pay attention and remember who the characters are, or just admire the colors. Colors are pretty. It's expected that following the advice in this report will cut down on the largest cause of death among Americans, laying on your back until your mouth fills up with saliva and you drown. Following the report's release, the most popular exercise now seems to be masturbating, but researchers warn that if you do it in public, stick to the sidewalk or you might get hit by cars.
This is the Onion News Network.
Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live, where your calls and thoughts are welcome. Whether you want to carry on with what we've been discussing or change the subject entirely, it's up to you. 603-283-6160 if you'd like to call in. That's 603-283-6160. With you tonight, it's Aria.
And Nikki.
And we have an alternative story to this coming up that is calling the BBC transphobic over this article that they have run. And for those who haven't been listening, the article here describes in detail, well, not in detail, this massive social pressure. They haven't explicitly identified any trans women who said anything like, you have to be willing to date me or you're transphobic.
I think there was just that last one.
Which was the trans woman who didn't respect the fact that the lesbian was too drunk to have consented.
Yeah, I think that's what it was.
Yeah,
but that's the only one that we've heard of. And
that's seriously messed up in its own right.
Yeah.
But as far as I'm aware, I don't recall that person saying, oh, well, you have to be willing to...
I think she said that she was blackmailing her, if I remember correctly.
It's not impossible.
But
I don't think the article is transphobic. I think it raises a serious issue that people in the trans community need to actually deal with, because this social pressure is evidently very real. But let's go to the phones. We have Bad Slave calling from New Hampshire. Bad Slave, you're on Free Talk Live.
Hi, Aria. Hi, Nikki. Thank you for taking my call. I just want to say that in my, and you can confirm this or not, Aria, but it occurs to me that all the interactions that I see of
trans women
people, women, mostly women. I don't think the men are this way because they're originally feminine in a sense, I guess. But the ones who transition from men to women, even the panel discussion with Ben Shapiro and that football player, trans person.
I don't know who you're talking about.
You caught that one? Oh, okay, never mind.
No, I mean, so what's your opinion on this?
Well, my opinion is that trans people are naturally somehow, more likely to be just not fun people, not great people, not,
I think I'm probably one of an extremely fun person.
Well, I would consider you definitely, on the other side of that, as you say. But I think that, and you may have more contacts with, that they have higher expectations than what just normal people have.
I don't think they have higher expectations. They have unrealistic expectations. Like, I know a fair number of trans... I was walking down the streets of Keene back when I was running for sheriff, and I happened across someone who recognized me. They stopped and they introduced me to, quote, a trans woman friend of theirs who had a full-on 5 o'clock shadow, shaved head, something like 280 pounds, and I walked away from the situation as fast as I could because there was no way I could bring myself to call this person she. And I know what the trans community would say about this, because I would have called this person he if I had used a pronoun. They're like, well, you're just making their gender dysphoria worse by calling them he. No, that beard is making the gender dysphoria worse. If you want to be treated like a woman, if you want to feel like a woman, do something to achieve that. Don't expect other people to put in the work for you.
Yeah, I mean, I actually, watch Blair White's podcasts, and man, she's done a great job getting herself looking like a woman, and that counts. And I've complimented.
I don't know anything about Blair White, but I mean,
really,
No,
That's
I mean,
interesting.
why would I?
She's
I don't care what other
fairly
talking heads have to say.
She's a popular YouTuber.
Yeah, I don't
But
care what she has to say, but I mean, sure. Plastic surgery is not very expensive. I have a vocal surgery consultation coming up next month. It's just something that, I hadn't really felt the urgent need to do.
Yeah.
But now I'm like, look, if I'm really going to be talking for a living, I would want my voice to more accurately reflect how I'm trying to appear. And, there's some facial reconstruction, not facial reconstruction, but there's some facial cosmetic surgery and stuff like that in the works. But that's just a matter of plastic surgery. And I agree, those things are good. It makes it easier for people. But if someone is just willing to put in the effort, I'm willing to work with them.
Right.
But if they're not willing to put in the effort, I don't require them to have any sort of plastic surgery or vocal feminization surgery. And I know one person who just started transitioning, and I'm going with there at this point. They're super excited about vocal training surgery. Not vocal training surgery, vocal training and all of this stuff. Having tried that crap for years, it's completely ineffective. So I don't blame people for their voices. I don't blame them for having, prominent brow bones or a deep voice or square shoulders. All of that stuff's beyond their control.
But you could at least shave, maybe.
Yeah, but you could at least shave the beard. I mean, that's the position I'm coming from with it. And if they're willing to meet me halfway, because gender norms, they are a thing. That's the whole reason that gender and sex are differentiated in modern society. I get it. Okay, your sex is male, but your gender is female because you identify as a female. Fine, whatever. But if you want me to respect that, then do the things that the gender that we know to be female in our heads is going to correspond for me, so that I don't have to put in the work that you're willing to refuse to put in. That's how I feel about it. As long as people will meet me halfway, and thank you so much for the call tonight, Bass Slave. As long as people are willing to meet me halfway with some level of effort, then I will put in the effort to address them how they want to be addressed.
Yeah.
But if they're not willing to even meet me halfway, if they just want to sit there in men's clothes with a beard and a shaved head and be like, no, I want you to call me female.
Well,
sorry.
And to me, that's a little weird. Nothing really confuses me about trans people, but it does confuse me when someone wants to be called her, she, but looks like a man and dresses like a man and has a beard and a shaved head. You would expect that person to identify as a man, but for some reason using feminine pronouns. To me, that makes absolutely no sense.
It doesn't make sense to me either.
I mean, do whatever you want to do, but you can't be really upset when people are misgendering you,
But the trans community would say that I'm being transphobic by even having these positions, and I disagree entirely. I care about that person who I encountered on the street. I care about their mental health, so much so that I want them to actually do something that is causing them to experience gender dysphoria. Instead of having me do something, instead of having me put a Band-Aid on it, let's get this person to actually take some steps so that they feel the way that they identify, so that they look the way they identify. Let's actually address the gender dysphoria instead of pretending like it's not there. Because me calling this person her or she wasn't going to help at all. But shaving that beard probably would be a good place to start. So this article goes on. While welcomed by some in the LGBTQ community... Oh, I skipped this part. So they threatened... They keep saying they here, but it's editor's notes, and I'm assuming the actual speaker wrote she. She threatened to out me as a TERF and risk my job if I refused to sleep with them. Oh, no, we did get into that. They used
that's the one
force.
that I was remembering.
Yes, they used physical force when I changed my mind upon seeing them and raped me. Angela's report was described as transphobic by others.
And it's so frustrating because if a cis male did that to somebody, the LGBT community would be all over it. They would be crucifying him. But if a trans woman does it, it's somehow okay, and then she's transphobic for getting raped, that makes absolutely no sense.
It makes none at all. And it's always okay to withdraw consent. You don't have to give a reason. If someone gets undressed and you're about to have sex with them, it is always 100% okay to say, you know what, no, I don't want to do this anymore. And if it doesn't end there, then it's rape. So it's not transphobia to call that rape.
Yeah.
It's immoral. It's evil to act like that's anything but rape.
And that shouldn't have to be spelled out.
It's Free Talk Live.
Breaking weather news. Belize is sunny and around 82 degrees every day this week.
What's the forecast for your life? If current politics and economic prospects are cramping your freedom, escape to the tropics. ECI Development has affordable second homes for you to own or rent in Belize and other tropical countries. Places with stable governments and growing economies. Secure your freedom now. To find out more, send an email to ftl@ecidevelopment.com.
After a devastating war, the alien visitors were driven back, and their willing human collaborators were left behind to face the music. When Emma Jean Anderson's ex-lover brings her from prison, Nathan Foster and his 14-year-old nephew Ben are tasked with bringing the pair to justice. An easy enough job until they discover something is inside Emma Jean, and the fate of the planet hangs in the balance. The Family Business by Mike Coopery from BaneBooks.com.
Are you tired of governments around the world killing innocent people? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin is money that cannot be inflated or controlled by any state. By continuing to use their money, you're perpetuating the killing. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available to you now. Learn it, use it, spread it.
Get started with Bitcoin at Bitcoin.com. It's Bitcoin.com. Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com. The Shire Free Church offers a sanctuary to those seeking an escape from state churches.
The Shire Free Church is an interfaith, diverse group of people that may not share identical theological beliefs. As a member in or minister of the Shire Free Church, you are a sovereign individual and may be the faith of your choice.
We don't claim to have all of the answers.
We are open to all peaceful people.
We want to learn from each other.
What unifies the Shire Free Church and its diverse members is peace,
love, and liberty. There are many paths to God, one for every individual.
The Shire Free Church does not define a specific path beyond those parameters that must be your foundation.
Peace as your way,
love as your guide,
and liberty as your light.
Learn more at church.shiresociety.com.
That's church.shiresociety.com. Some of you asked, and now we've delivered. LRN.FM's live Keene, New Hampshire studio shows are now streamed in HD on Twitch. Visit our channel at twitch.lrn.fm and give it a follow. If you have Amazon Prime, you get one free subscription on Twitch. If you use it on our channel, Twitch will give LRN.FM a monthly piece of your Prime subscription cost. So please watch, follow, share, and subscribe to twitch.lrn.fm. That's twitch.lrn.fm. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, 603-283-6160 if you'd like to join us, weigh in on the topic at hand, or change the subject, talk about whatever you want. That's 603-283-6160. With you tonight, it's Aria.
And Nikki.
And last year we told you about Intercoin, which can help any business or organization launch their own currency or raise money using their own token. Now, Intercoin.org has launched worldwide, so if there's a token you want to launch or an app you want to build, go to Intercoin.org, enter your email, and the team there will get in touch with you to learn about your needs. And while you're there, if you want, get some of the Intercoin investor tokens for yourself. That's intercoin.org, intercoin.org. Let's go to the phones. We have Kadu calling. Kadu, you're on Free Talk Live.
Yes, I've been suffering from a serious case of genital confusion. And
I sort of am too after this article.
Just to help aid in my healing process, can I ask for my betterment? How can I learn to love Big Dick?
Hey, dude, you can't say that. Sorry, I gotta drop your call there. A little bit too vulgar there, Kadu, but we do have a dump button, so luckily that went into effect. Anyway, we have Dave calling from New Hampshire. Dave, you're on Free Talk Live.
Yeah, caught me off guard there. I thought he was going to go for at least 20 seconds.
Yeah, I was a bit surprised as well. I mean, it's not the question that we necessarily have to object to, but the terminology used.
Yeah, radio rules.
Yeah. That's a good question for Freer Talk Live. We don't have one currently scheduled, but that's a good question for Freer Talk Live, not the radio show. So what's on your mind tonight, Dave?
I had an epiphany the other day, about 9 months late. Thinking about that, our Pearl Harbor, the 316, the raid on you, your studio, and so many Bitcoiners around New Hampshire by the feds. I think we learned something important from that and from the aftermath from it that hasn't been discussed much yet.
Is that we should have gone to Japan on March the 15th?
Maybe, but that's one thing. Maybe, but there used to be this sort of I think of it as sort of an Eric Voorhees or Adam Kokesh approach, where like, this Free State Project thing is really interesting. We're really interested in moving to what's that thing over there? It's a shiny Bitcoin, and they just sort of. Adam didn't cancel any plans, but I think they both kind of had this idea that that's the key to getting our freedom is Bitcoin and the monetary freedom and so forth. And I think what we learned on 316 was that the Bitcoin community, although the Bitcoin itself is great, I love it, and I love those guys, but the Bitcoin community actually was not useful at all, almost, in defending you guys when you were arrested. And I expected
certainly not.
So much more.
There's a huge rift in the Bitcoin community between the Bitcoin community and the libertarian Bitcoin community. We're motivated by philosophical reasons. The Bitcoin community, they just want to make money. They don't care about the philosophical reasons behind Bitcoin or destroying the Fed or decentralizing the currency or freeing people so their lives aren't being destroyed by inflation. They don't care about any of that. They just care about making money.
The libertarian faction of the Bitcoin community also did not impress me. There was hardly any coverage at all in the Bitcoin press, which is widespread. There's a lot of Bitcoin press now. CoinDesk is the only, maybe a couple others, were the only ones that did good reports at all on what I envisioned in 2017 that the Bitcoin community, and I think I was part of this, the Bitcoin community could rise up together when members of, at least some of them could rise up when some of them were targeted, and they just didn't, not even in the form of telling people that it happened.
Well, I don't know that I agree. I can't Google everything that's going on. I know that The Verge wrote a really lengthy and fair article. It almost seemed like we converted the guy who wrote the Verge article to our philosophical understanding of cryptocurrency and the reasons that we believe in it as a valuable tool for securing liberty.
He's another one of the exceptions. Like CoinDesk was.
I mean, Bitcoin.com also wrote an article about us. I mean, it's
good,
hard to get bigger coverage than Bitcoin.com.
Most of them just ignored it, and what happened was
who is most of them?
I don't know. I could hardly ever find any articles about it in the Bitcoin.
Well, you said CoinDesk covered it, Bitcoin.com covered it,
yeah.
The Verge covered it.
There's dozens and dozens of outlets, and the coverage was
but you can't name one of them?
Actually. Of the other crypto outlets, well, I stopped reading them once I noticed they weren't doing what I thought would be helpful for us. And so I've kind of forgotten but there are dozens of them out there, and I went through them carefully in April to see which of them had bothered to cover this event. But the positive side of this is that the Free Staters, I feel like, have come through to a large extent, and it's a vindication of the idea of gathering in one physical location where you can provide some degree of logistical support to one another when an event of this type happens. If this hammer had fallen on cryptocurrency people somewhere else, and having only the Bitcoin community to fall back on, it would have been much more of a disaster than it was for you guys. It feels like to me. I don't know.
Yeah, Dave, I actually totally agree with you with that, because like right after the raid happened, watching this community come together, especially like the people directly in Keene and like southern New Hampshire.
Oh, Keene came together the day of the raid.
Literally seconds after. I mean, we had people on the street filming, so...
Chris Wade was on the street, in front of the raid 10 minutes into it. So
just
one,
Yeah, the sirens went off, the alert went out, and he was there within minutes. So being in a community, like watching everybody, and even the advocatism that you did, Dave, was really awesome with the Bitcoin Gandhi stuff. But watching everybody come together, I mean, we had people coming here, fixing the windows that were smashed. People were helping Bonnie with things, was that stuff that she needed. It was just like really heartwarming to see, like, wow, this is a community that cares. So I do hear you with what you're saying there, Dave.
So that's why we needed this in addition to a new currency.
That's why we needed the raid?
Well, the Free State Project.
Okay. Just wanted to be clear. I mean, absolutely, the Free State Project is important. Getting more people to New Hampshire. I'm just going to quote something I said to the Verge article author here, and I'm just quoting something I said elsewhere, and that's, to be honest, one Free Stater on the jury is going to hang the jury, and it's going to cause a mistrial, at the very least. That's assuming the Free Stater doesn't win them over, and there's something like 5,000 Free Staters in New Hampshire now, so having a bunch of liberty-minded people in one geographic area is definitely a good idea. If there were 20,000 Free Staters here, it would be even better. But even with just the 5,000, we've gotten something like 40 Liberty Free State reps in the State House. So we've got this constitutional amendment coming forward that would hopefully allow the United States to leave New Hampshire alone. I mean, it would allow New Hampshire to secede peaceably from the United States. So the Free State Project has been massively successful. And more people are coming here every day. We hope more people continue to come here every day. I don't think it was, the Crypto 6 or the March 16th raids that caused any of this. I tend to think COVID had a lot more to do with it. And the only reason we aren't seeing more people is because properties just aren't for sale here in New Hampshire. It's a great place to be.
If you want to bring more liberty into your community, there's something you should see. Intercoin, the movement you might want to join. If you like Bitcoin, break through. It's true. It's truly something new. If you'd like to see real prosperity, start your own currency, boost the economy. Intercoin, the movement you might want to join. If you like Bitcoin, its impact's hard to overstate, results you can appreciate. If you're tired of relying on the state, want to make your own community great, homelessness and hunger to eliminate, let the wealth accumulate. Don't wait for the growth rate to accelerate. Go to intercoin.org and get the coins for yourself.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. Prosecutors in New Mexico say they have not ruled out the possibility of criminal charges being filed in connection with the killing of cinematographer Helena Hutchins on the set of the film Rust earlier this month. The actor Alec Baldwin fired the fatal shot after being handed a gun that he believed contained only blanks. But police say they think there were as many as 500 rounds of ammunition on the set, some of them real bullets. Sheriff Adam Mendoza says the investigation continues into the projectile that killed the filmmaker.
We suspect that there was other live rounds that were found on the set. If the sheriff's office determines during our investigation a crime has occurred and probable cause exists, an arrest or arrests will be made and charges will be filed.
Top U.S. military commander General Mark Milley says China's testing of a hypersonic weapon is very concerning.
It's a very significant technological event that occurred, or test that occurred by the Chinese, and it has all of our attention.
The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff told Bloomberg TV the U.S. reaction was similar to the moment America realized the USSR had an advantage in the 1950s space race.
What we saw was a very significant event of a test of a hypersonic weapon system, and it is very concerning. I think I saw in some of the newspapers they used the term Sputnik moment. I don't know if it's quite a Sputnik moment, but I think it's very close to that.
Reaction has split along party lines to the budget unveiled on Wednesday by Britain's Chancellor. Rishi Sunak said the economy is recovering from COVID-19 faster than expected. He pledged £150 billion of fresh investment in a bid to help revive the economy. Lucy Fraser is a lawmaker with the country's governing Conservative Party.
We are going to invest, but we're going to invest very carefully and very strategically in the things that will grow our economy.
And James Murray is a lawmaker with the opposition Labour Party.
Well, we have to look at the budget in front of us and give our honest reaction. My honest reaction to it, sitting there today, was that the budget really shows how out of touch the Chancellor and his priorities are.
Poland must pay daily fines of over €1 million over controversial reforms to its judiciary. The sanctions have been ordered by the European Union's top court. From FSN's Europe desk in Brussels, Lucy Hoff reports.
Imposing daily fines in excess of €1 million is the final and most drastic step the European Court of Justice could have taken. The EU's executive says reforms conducted in Poland are a threat to judicial independence and subject the country's judges to political control. The sanctions will be deducted from the EU funds that Poland periodically receives, but last week Polish Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki said the country would not be intimidated.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, where you can call in and talk about whatever you want. 603-283-6160 if you'd like to do that. That's 603-283-6160. And be warned, if you want to discuss the topic at hand, you have to choose your wording very carefully. We've been making it a point to do that all night because obviously the FCC has rules and we have to abide by those in order to stay on radio stations. With you tonight, it's Aria.
And Nikki.
And this article goes on. Trans YouTuber Rose of Dawn, evidently that's her channel name, has discussed this issue that we've been talking about, which is where lesbian women feel like they're being pressured. Sometimes they are legit being pressured by trans individuals, but they just feel a sense of pressure to accept trans women sexually as women. This is something I've seen happen in real life to friends of mine. This was happening before I started my channel, and it was one of the things that spurred it on, said Rose. What's happening is women who are attracted to biological females and female parts are finding themselves put in very awkward positions where if, for example, on a dating website, a trans woman approaches them and they say, sorry, I'm not into trans women, then they are labeled as transphobic. Now, just imagine, substitute transphobic and trans women with any other demographic, and it will be obvious how absurd this is. If a man approached her and she says, sorry, I'm not into men, should they be labeled as misandrists for that? Obviously not. She just has a sexual orientation. And one of the messed up things, the article still hasn't gotten into it, is how they're characterizing this as just a matter of preference. Well, she just prefers this. No, this is her sexual orientation. That's not a choice. It's not a preference. It's her orientation. And for years, we've been told to respect that. Suddenly, because it's inconvenient to the trans community, they're being pressured into not accepting that. And by and large, it does seem to be very rare for a trans woman to try to play this card, like you have to do this or you're transphobic. Evidently, it does happen. I'm not saying it doesn't. But the majority of this just seems to be a social pressure from just the LGBTQ left as a whole. Rose made this video in response to a series of tweets by trans athlete Veronica Ivy, then known as Rachel McKinnon, who wrote about hypothetical scenarios where trans people are rejected and argued that, quote, genital preferences are transphobic. Again,
like how though? I don't even understand how these people are defending this position.
Because to them, saying that you're not interested in being with a trans woman is just flat out transphobic.
Because I can get behind, okay, trans women are women. I can get behind that, absolutely. But if they have different body parts that lesbians might not like...
Yes, it's not a preference, it's an orientation.
Yes.
I find the use of preferences here to be really undermining of the lesbian and gay communities, because they're not preferences. I can't get into the tweets that they talk about because they're really vulgar and not important, but they do cite some tweets here. Rose believes these views, which are the views that we've been talking about just now, where having a preference makes one transphobic, are incredibly toxic. She believes the idea that dating preferences are transphobic is being pushed by radical trans activists and their, quote, self-proclaimed allies who have extreme views who don't reflect the views of trans women she knows in real life. Yeah, that's sort of my take on it as well.
Yeah.
I don't know any trans women who would say this. Certainly from my own friends group, the trans women I'm friends with, almost all of them agree lesbians are free to exclude trans women from their dating pool. I can't believe that's even a remotely controversial statement in any segment of the population. However, she believes even trans people are afraid to talk openly about this for fear of abuse, for fear of being cannibalized by the very community that they're part of by definition.
Well, I mean, that happens to you all the time, Aria. I feel like every day on Facebook, I'm seeing somebody calling you transphobic or, you know, some other name.
It does happen a lot. I mean, they're cannibals, and I stepped outside the narrow little box that they think. Imagine that. You want to open up sexuality and gender and identity and allow people to be whatever they want to be, express themselves however they want, as long as they fit inside your stupid little box. Right. And if they step outside that box, then they're too much of an individual. They're exploring themselves and their identities too much, and they have to be crucified in the same degree, or worse, as this other lesbian talked about earlier, than Hitler. When for those who weren't listening,
so
then
crazy.
This lesbian, because she refused to date a trans woman, was told that, you know, if I was in a room with you and Hitler, I would strangle you, not Hitler.
That's like, oh my gosh. And I might be misunderstood here, but I would assume that bisexual people would mainly date trans women and not lesbians. But I mean, obviously it's up to people to like decide what they're identifying as.
That's sort of how I feel about it. If someone is interested in dating me or having any sort of relationship with me, then they have to be bisexual.
That would make sense to me.
Or pansexual, which is basically the same thing.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't expect a heterosexual male to be interested in a relationship with me, and I wouldn't expect a lesbian to be interested in a relationship with me. Instead, I have this huge pool of people to operate from who are bisexual and pansexual, because whether or not people admit it or realize it, bisexuality and pansexuality, they're far more common than heterosexual men and lesbian women. That's what I'm trying to say. The trans activist side is incredibly rabid against people who they see as stepping out of line. I might have to ask my handler for permission to check out this person's YouTube channel, because she sounds like someone I would agree with and, you know, actually want to listen to. Debbie Hayden, a science teacher who transitioned in 2012 and writes about trans issues, worries some people transition without realizing how hard it will be to form relationships. And this is a good point. Although there is currently very little data on the sexual orientation of trans women, she believes most are female attracted because they are biologically male, and most males are attracted to women. The vast majority of trans women that I know are attracted to men. I think I'm one of the outliers in that I prefer women. So when trans women are trying to find partners, When lesbian women say, we want women, and heterosexual women say they want a heterosexual man, that leaves trans women isolated from relationships and possibly feeling very let down by society, angry and upset, and feeling that the world is out to get them, she said.
Does it, though? Because as we just kind of said, most people probably fall into the bisexual, pansexual pool.
Yeah, but...
I mean, I guess, like, location matters. So, like, for example, if you're in rural Mississippi, you probably don't have too many, you know, gay people or, you know, open bisexual people or so.
That's certainly true. I mean, there's plenty of men out there who wouldn't want to, who are bisexual, but wouldn't want to be seen publicly dating a trans woman. Those people are just cowards. I wouldn't want to date someone like that in the first place.
Yeah.
I don't want to have anything to do with someone who's like, hey, yeah, look, I'm interested in you, but we got to keep it quiet. I can't let my cousin know or my brother know or my family know that. Okay, then there's nothing for them to know. Get out of my life and never speak to me again, because out of all of the things I don't have time for, cowardice is at the bottom of that list. Debbie thinks it's fine if a lesbian woman does not want to date a trans woman. I would tend to agree, and I can't believe that even has to be argued. But Debbie is concerned some are being pressured to do so, and I agree, that's also concerning me. The way that shaming is used is just horrific. It's emotional manipulation and warfare that is going on. These women who want to form relationships with other biological women are feeling bad about that. How did we get here? And this article is going to continue talking about how exactly we got to this point, but we can't deny, as a community, as the LGBTQ community, we can't deny that this is very clearly happening enough that we're not even halfway through this article. That's how bad this has actually gotten, and no one's really talking about it. And the people who do talk about it, like myself, are called transphobic for having these common sense positions on it. What are your thoughts? Weigh in, 603-283-6160. There's more coming up. It's Free Talk Live.
Why did you move to the Shire?
I moved here to the Shire because there's other people around who take liberty just as seriously as I do.
I moved to the Shire because I saw videos of people challenging authority and thought that I could get support myself. It called to me, like, do this, right now.
I wanted to be around people like me who got it, and once I got here, I knew there was nowhere else that I wanted to be.
I've always wanted to change the world, so I moved to the Shire to join people who were actually working towards doing the same thing.
The people here are awesome, loving, and positive. It was for the adventure and for the feeling of something important is happening here. And I just wanted to come to sort of be part of that.
Visit ShireSociety.com to read and sign the Shire Society Declaration and learn the reasons why, if you love liberty, you should immigrate to the Shire. Plus, connect with others via the forum at ShireSociety.com. That's ShireSociety.com. The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
So the protection of life, liberty, and property is what the Free State Project is all about. But it's an effort to move 20,000 people who understand.
It's about demonstrating to the entire country
that, yeah, we can have a free market, a truly free market. Making it just a freer, great place to live.
It's the world's largest voluntarist libertarian community, and it's only getting bigger.
That's amazing, to be able to move to a place where other people like passionately believe in being free and independent.
What the Free State Project is managing to do, though, is to put their money where their mouth is. It's physically getting up across the country and saying, let's go someplace and let's demonstrate the power of these ideas. There's a lot of kind of philosophy that surrounds liberty. There's a lot of thinking about it and talking about it. But here in New Hampshire, people are doing it.
101 Reasons Liberty Lives in New Hampshire, a documentary by Free State Project Early Movers. Watch it free at 101reasonsfilm.com. 101reasonsfilm.com. The LRN.FM social media channels have been revamped. We've eliminated Facebook and focused on other platforms like Twitter and Mastodon, the decentralized alternative to Twitter. On our accounts, you'll find posts from multiple LRN.FM show hosts together in one place. Follow us on Twitter at twitter.lrn.fm, or better yet, move to the decentralized Mastodon social media platform at toot.lrn.fm, toot.lrn.fm. I think you'll like it.
Are you tired of your taxes funding endless occupations around the world? Antiwar.com is run by people who understand that wars abroad become wars at home, wars on our freedoms. Antiwar.com is dedicated to bringing you the latest in news, views, interviews, and reviews from the top movers and shakers in the anti-occupation movement. Antiwar.com has it all, from thorough foreign policy analysis to interviews with whistleblowers who used to run the military-industrial complex. Anti-war, pro-free market. That's antiwar.com.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, where you can weigh in with your thoughts and opinions. 603-283-6160 if you'd like to do that. That's 603-283-6160. With you tonight, it's Aria.
And Nikki.
And we're talking about this serious issue that it's difficult to even talk about because I just know that someone out there is going to hear this show and is going to immediately write me off as transphobic. Because this happened when I ran for sheriff a lot too, where when I did the Reddit AMA, a lot of people were just saying, oh, well, surprise, Aria is also transphobic. And I'm just sitting here as a trans person who's just trying to be reasonable, being called transphobic. It's absolutely bizarre. And that's the culture that has been cultivated here, where lesbians feel like if they aren't interested in dating a trans woman, then they're going to be called transphobic. And sadly, they are concerned about that because that could very well happen.
Honestly, I feel like 10 years ago, this wouldn't be happening. Like 10 years ago, it'd be like, oh yeah, lesbians generally don't go after trans women. Like that makes sense.
And it still makes sense to me.
Yeah. But we wouldn't be having seeing articles like this, or there wouldn't be that societal pressure or that social pressure on lesbians to have to entertain being in a relationship with a trans woman that they're not actually sexually attracted to.
Absolutely. Something has changed within the last decade or so. But to be clear, they have not pointed to very many specific examples of trans women who personally exploited this and manipulated people directly into having some sort of relationship with them. Most of it has just been this sort of social pressure, which we see a lot of in regards to heterosexual men saying, oh no, I'm not dating a trans woman. And the LGBTQ community just flips out and goes, oh, you're transphobic. It's like, no, he just has an orientation and that's okay. They call it a preference, but I'm trying to break that because an orientation is one thing. Look, I'm pansexual, which means I don't generally take gender or sex into account when choosing partners. I do want to choose in relationships because I prefer women for relationships and things like that. That's a preference. Open to both, but I prefer one. Asking, okay, well, do you want to go to the grocery store or do you want to go to prison? Asking, do you want to do this thing that you want to do or do you want to do this thing that you don't want to do? That's not a preference. That's a matter of consent.
Yeah.
And this framing sexual orientation as a preference is just a way of masking the fact that what they're talking about here is your orientation is irrelevant. And it's okay for people to rape you if they don't fall in line with your orientation.
And not only is this issue harmful to the lesbians that are facing it, but it's also harmful to the trans people, I would argue as well.
Yeah, because most people assume I'm just one of these crazy trans people who's going to flip out and start throwing stuff in GameStop, but I'm not. I'm the type of trans woman who went to GameStop and made a spoof video of that with the GameStop employees.
Yeah.
And I called it Macho Ma'am Tranny Savage Flips Out. It was great. A lot of fun to do. But the staff there was in on it. They didn't know it was coming because I was sort of ruined it. But as soon as I started, they knew what was going on, and it was a lot of fun. But yeah, most people just assume, I gotta tiptoe and be careful. And I don't know what to do. Like when I started the job that I just sort of still work at, but only barely, the on-duty manager asked me, like, look, I don't know how to ask this. So is the name that we're going to be paying you the name that we're going to be calling you? And I'm like, look, I have enough problems in my life where I don't care what name you put on the paycheck. I care more about the fact that you're going to pay me than what name you're going to put on it. But a lot of trans people are like, no, that's an offensive question. How dare you ask that? Like, how sheltered are you people if your employer asking what name should we put on your paycheck is an offensive question?
And I would feel comfortable having to exist in life, having people walk around on eggshells around me and being afraid to ask me questions. And I mean, that just sucks.
It does. I was at a Dollar Tree here. I don't remember what I was doing there because I haven't been to Dollar Tree in like 2 years. But I was there for some reason, and some little kid asked her mom, is that a man or a woman? And the mother goes, shh, don't ask those sorts of questions. I'm like, why are you silencing this child's curiosity? This is a perfect opportunity for you to explain to your child the great varieties of human beings that exist in the world. Instead, you're like, no, curiosity, bad. You can't ask that question.
Yeah.
No, I would be happy to answer your child's question if you could just direct your child. Say, hey, I don't know. Ask them. And I would have been happy to answer.
Yeah. But nowadays, you'll never know if you could have been one of the crazy people and flipped out at the kids. So it's like, it's bad that it has to be that way.
So Stonewall is the largest LGBT organization in the United Kingdom and Europe. The author asked the charity about these issues, but it was unable to provide anyone for an interview. However, in a statement, Chief Executive Nancy Kelly likened not wanting to date trans people to not wanting to date people of color, fat people, or disabled people. And I just have to... I'm not going to weigh in on whether or not wanting to date a black person or not wanting to date a black person is racism. I'm not weighing in on that one. I'm going to address the fat people and the disabled people thing. Because, I wouldn't date either of those either. Because, for one, I'm not attracted to fat people. And nothing is going to change that. So, I don't see that as being a problem. That's not a preference. That's a reality. A preference would be, well, would you rather have a skinny girl or a skinny guy? That's a preference for me as someone who's pansexual, but a skinny person versus a fat person isn't a preference. It's do you want to do a thing that you do want to do, or do you want to be forced to do a thing that you don't want to do? Which, as we've said, is a matter of consent, not a matter of preference. She said sexuality is personal and something which is unique to each of us. Well, unless your sexuality prohibits you from having sex with people of color, fat people, or disabled people, or trans people, then it's not personal. Then it's transphobia, or racism, or fat phobia, or ableism, I guess. And I wouldn't necessarily have a problem with dating a disabled person. It would be, what kind of disability? Are we talking like a quadriplegic here? Because, no, I don't think I could do that because I'm just a very energetic person. But like a blind person or a deaf person, sure.
Yeah.
There is no right way to be a lesbian, and only we can know who we're attracted to. Nobody should ever be pressured into dating or pressured into dating people they aren't attracted to. But if you find that when dating, you are writing off entire groups of people, like people of color, fat people, disabled people, or trans people, then it's worth considering how societal prejudices may have shaped your attractions.
I don't think so.
I don't either, and I'm generally of the impression that lesbians, gay, bisexual people, trans people are born that way and not having their orientations shaped by societal prejudices, because for the last 30 years, the LGBTQ community has spent their time telling me that people are just born with their sexual orientations and they're not just being shaped by societal prejudices. But now, in the name of making sure that trans women are treated like they're just totally normal, cisgender women, all of that's getting thrown out the window. We know that prejudice is still common in the LGBTQ community, and it's important that we talk about that openly and honestly. So Stonewall was founded in 1989 by people opposed to what was known as Section 28, which was legislation which stopped councils and schools from, quote, promoting homosexuality. The organization changed in 2015 and announced that it would campaign for trans equality. So a new group, LGB Alliance, has been formed partly in response to the change of focus by people who believe the interests of LGB people are being left behind. And I have to say, I've said LGBT so many times in my life that I have to stop myself from saying LGBT when I say LGB. But I totally get why that's a thing. And if they want to exclude trans people from their alliance, I'm fine with that. Because being gay, lesbian, or bisexual, those are matters of sexual orientation, whereas trans is a matter of sexual identity. I get why they're commonly looped in together, but they're not exactly, or gender identity, they're not exactly the same thing. So moving on, the LGBT Alliance says it is particularly concerned about younger and therefore more vulnerable lesbians being pressured into relationships with trans women. It's very disturbing that you find people saying, it doesn't happen, nobody pressures anyone to go to bed with anyone else, but we know that this isn't the case. We know a minority of trans women do pressure lesbians to go out with them, and it's a very disturbing phenomenon. But again, it's mostly social pressure from everything this article has said. There's probably some minority of trans women who are individually exerting pressure, but the vast majority of it is just this sort of toxic, aggressive, ravenous, cannibalistic culture that the trans community has created, that the LGBTQ plus community has created on behalf of trans women. And that's the issue. When we come back, we're going to talk about the other side of this story, because someone else is arguing that everything we've been saying, agreeing with these people, is transphobic. It's Free Talk Live.
Breaking weather news. Belize is sunny and around 82 degrees every day this week.
What's the forecast for your life? If current politics and economic prospects are cramping your freedom, escape to the tropics. ECI Development has affordable second homes for you to own or rent in Belize and other tropical countries. Places with stable governments and growing economies. Secure your freedom now. To find out more, send an email to ftl@ecidevelopment.com.
When a lunar observatory detects a radio broadcast originating from Proxima Centauri, the nations of Earth discover their first contact with an alien race may also be their last. With the Proximans facing an extinction-level disaster, Earth must choose between sending a ship on a multi-year journey or allowing nature to take its course. Saving Proxima, a hard science fiction thriller by Travis S. Taylor and Les Johnson from BaneBooks.com.
I'm a little obsessed with My Magic Mud. Several years ago, I met Jessica Armand, the founder and CEO of My Magic Mud, and I didn't even know my teeth were coffee stained. A week's worth of use convinced me, and now I use it every 3 or 4 days. It's clinically proven to whiten teeth, and I think it cleans better too. My Magic Mud's available at most local health food stores, Sprouts, Natural Grocers, CVS, Walmart's Natural Beauty Aisle, but I can get it for you for 20% off with coupon code FTL20 at mymagicmud.com. FTL20 mymagicmud.com.
There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in San Francisco, I'm Ira Spitzer. Law enforcement in New Mexico have confirmed that a lead projectile is what killed Helena Hutchins on the movie set Rust. In a news conference, the Santa Fe County Sheriff said investigators believed there were other live rounds of ammunition on set, but that it is too early to know if there's enough evidence to press criminal charges. FSN's Tony Waterman has more from Austin, Texas.
Sheriff Adon Mendoza said authorities have recovered 3 firearms, including the vintage Colt pistol actor Alec Baldwin fired on set, killing cinematographer Helena Hutchins. 500 rounds of ammunition have also been confiscated, a mix of blanks, dummy rounds, and what law enforcement suspects to be live rounds. He said a lead projectile recovered from the shoulder of the film's director, Joel Souza, is what killed Hutchins. Law enforcement also believes there may have been other live rounds on set.
If the sheriff's office determines during our investigation a crime has occurred and probable cause exists, an arrest or arrests will be made and charges will be filed.
The investigation appears to now be focusing on the movie's assistant director, David Halls, who handed Baldwin the gun, and the film's armorer, Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, both of whom the sheriff mentioned by name. It's still unclear how the projectile landed in the gun in the first place. The Santa Fe District Attorney, Mary Carmack Altwies, says the investigation is ongoing, and if the evidence and law support charges, she will initiate prosecution. Tony Waterman, Austin, Texas.
According to the Santa Fe Sheriff's Office search warrant affidavit, Rust's Assistant Director Dave Halls told investigators that he didn't check all the rounds of the gun before it was handed off to Alec Baldwin. The president of the United Nations Security Council has called for the organization to unite in its condemnation of the coup in Sudan. The member states are yet to release a joint statement on the situation. FSN's Sarah Walton reports.
The Kenyan ambassador to the UN, Martin Kamani, who currently holds the rotating presidency of the Security Council, called for the body to step up and officially condemn the military takeover in Sudan. He welcomed a move by the African Union to suspend the country from its organisation until power is handed back to civilians. Mr. Kamani said he hoped to see a similarly strong response from the Security Council. In a meeting to discuss Sudan on Wednesday, a number of member states denounced the coup and called for the release of the country's prime minister, but work on a joint statement is said to be ongoing. Sarah Walton, New York.
A recent rally on Wall Street came to an end Wednesday, with the S&P 500 coming off a record close. This comes despite the release of strong earnings reports from some major tech firms. From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Today, Grandparents for Climate Action. It's a British pressure group of activists vowing to make their voices heard at the upcoming COP26 Climate Change Summit in Glasgow. With the UN warning only yesterday that the world is still flirting with climate change disaster, much of the focus remains on young activists like Greta Thunberg. But Nancy Lindisfarne, a grandparent campaigning for change, says she'll be at COP26 as well.
What we're seeing now is this enormous kind of energy that is coming, of course, from the young, from Greta, from others, but also the evident increasing urgency about the climate. California, the West Coast is burning, the Arctic ice is melting. So suddenly there's an energy again. And one of the things that I'm going to do is go to the COP with the idea of reviving, I suppose, I hope across the country, the kind of action that we had 5 years ago to pitch us up so that we can actually join the front lines.
She says the failure of the Paris Climate Change Accords to deliver real progress has reignited impetus among an older generation of activists who are demanding change, and hers is just one of several groups mobilising grandparents and retirees who want to protect the climate for future generations. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
The main news again. The assistant director of the film Rust tells investigators that he didn't check all the rounds of the gun that was used to kill cinematographer Helena Hutchins. The president of the United Nations Security Council calls for the organization to unite in its condemnation of the coup in Sudan. And the recent rally on Wall Street comes to an end despite strong earnings results from some major tech firms. That is the latest feature story news. Ira Spitzer reporting.
A reclusive deity hasn't written a new book in 2,000 years, and a local rescue dog is adopted for a couple weeks. This is the Onion Week in Review. This week, in a devastating blow to the nation's laundry, 16,000 Americans were reportedly stained during the messiest day in U.S. history. Reports confirm that nearly 3,000 citizens received permanent stains on their good shirt from mustard splatter off a dropped hot dog, along with 12,000 cases of spilled coffee and other dark beverages ruining Americans' pair of hand-wash-only pants. Government officials further indicated that federal assistance for the nation's overwhelmed dry cleaners would be necessary. And in this week's local news, an elderly Rite Aid patron stretches out a conversation about toothpaste to prolong human contact. In other news, artifacts discovered buried in Washington, D.C. suggest humans once passed laws there. A self-centered child blames his parents' divorce entirely on himself. And a night of uninterrupted sleep really throws off a man's entire day.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live. Your calls and thoughts are welcome. 603-283-6160 if you'd like to weigh in. That's 603-283-6160. With you tonight, it's Aria.
And Nikki.
And we've been talking about this article that it talks about this major issue that is something I had never given any thought to, but now that I've learned about it, I'm like, you know what? That makes perfect sense, and I can see exactly how this would come about as a result of the LGBTQ and allies in particular, because I suspect the vast majority of this is being pushed by people who are not actually LGBT, but who are allies, which is lesbians feel compelled, pressure, coerced into having relationships with trans women, even though they're not actually interested in it. And it's the article itself kept conflating sexual orientation with preferences, and all of this is transphobic, apparently. When I learned about this article, it was because people were accusing the BBC of being transphobic. So in trying to find this article, the first thing you came up with was exactly that, which is...
Yep. I didn't even find the art. It was like the actual article was probably like 10 results down on Google from what I Googled. So this is the first one I found. The BBC's ignorance about trans women and sex is disgusting and dangerous. And under it, it has like a big red fear-mongering sticker.
It really does. I happen to find their article to not be disgusting or dangerous. I found it to be bringing to light a topic that I had never thought about before, and that clearly needs to be talked about.
I found it to be the exact opposite, actually. I think what's going on is disgusting and dangerous, that lesbian women are feeling pressured by society to entertain relationships with trans women that they otherwise are not attracted to. And I think that's really disgusting and dangerous. And I think the BBC article brought that issue to light. And I think that was a really positive and constructive thing. But let's see what the Daily Beast has to say about this, because clearly they do not agree with us. Let me just say this right up front. If you do not want to have sex with me, a transgender woman, it is very likely I feel the same way about you.
Well, that's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, we're off to a good start so far. And even if you do want to make love to me, or if I desire you, nothing we say or do can change my mind or yours. So long as we feel strongly opposed to becoming intimate for whatever reason. Otherwise, that's not sex, it's rape. And rape is violence, not sex. We call this a matter of consent, and it's not a new thing just because transgender is not, in fact, a new thing.
Okay, we're off to a good start so far. Yep. I've heard nothing objectionable. No. Sounds reasonable.
This concept of consent, however, is entirely glossed over in the BBC News Reporter's article. No, that's kind of what the whole thing was about.
Yeah, it really was. It was about how, hey, we're being coerced into this. One woman, a few of them even used the word rape, I believe.
Yeah, so I don't know, this person must have misunderstood the article, because I don't think we have the same... It seems like we haven't read the same article.
I would tend to agree. A lot of trans people who watched the Dave Chappelle special didn't seem to have watched the same special that I watched.
Yeah. And I think this happens sometimes when people they hear about a certain thing from, a different article, or like their friends tell them, oh, the Dave Chappelle show was this, that, and the other thing. So then they watch it, and then they have that in the back of their head the whole time. So they're not watching it with a fresh pair of eyes. They're not watching it as themselves. They're watching it as their friends and as their friends' opinions. So I think it kind of taints people's own opinions on things. And I think that happens a lot in our society nowadays.
I'm sure that it does.
So this article goes on to continue. Some? Wait, what? Who? How many is some? And how many are we? I'm frankly ticked off that for someone whose resume shows...
Does it matter how many is some? If it's one, it's too many.
Exactly.
I shouldn't have to explain that.
I think maybe what she's getting at here is that she thinks that it might be painting trans women in a bad light, but...
Okay.
Which I can...
Well, it did...
But it didn't really, though, because the article was mainly talking about...
Societal
pressures, exactly. Maybe the headline kind of made it seem like they were going to talk about individual trans women pressuring lesbians.
And they did. There was that one who said, I'm gonna out you as a TERF and you're going to lose your job or whatever. So there was that one particular individual. But that one particular individual only has the power to do that because of the societal pressure.
Yeah.
If that societal pressure wasn't there and this person called up their job like, hey, I'm a trans woman and your lesbian employee refused to have sex with me, the employer said, okay, she didn't consent. That's her right.
Yeah,
but because
exactly.
all of this societal pressure, that lesbian may very well have been fired over that. So even those trans women who they cited, they wouldn't be able to do this nonsense if not for the societal pressure that was backing them.
Exactly.
That they're exploiting, acting, I have to say, like cis hetero men in the process. You have to do this thing or you have to have sex with me or there will be terrible consequences. It just feels to me like those particular trans women may not actually be trans. They're just exploiting the societal pressure to get and take what they want.
That's what it sounds like. So this article continues to say, I'm frankly ticked off that for someone whose resume shows that they've been a journalist for a decade, Lowbridge sets an ironically new very low threshold for balanced reporting and fact-checking and worse, spreads anti-transgender propaganda, transphobia, and fear-mongering. How? I got none of that from that article that we just read.
Did they want her to interview a bunch of... I mean, she cited a bunch of trans women.
Yeah, she cited trans women and lesbians. I mean, she got people from both sides.
And alarmingly, the trans women that she interviewed was like, yeah, I've seen this happen with friends of mine.
Yeah.
So maybe she didn't quote the other side of the story, or she didn't go find the side of the story that you wanted to, because that side of the story doesn't exist. Or when it does exist... It's people like me talking about it who get shouted down as spreading anti-transgender propaganda, being transphobic, and just fear-mongering. Maybe that's why. It's because people can't talk about the other side of the story.
Exactly. So through selective sourcing and questionable quotes, Lowbridge uses phrases like biological female and biological male to frame cisgender lesbians as defenseless maidens and equate trans women with aggressive cisgender male sexual predators. Perhaps not so coincidentally.
What's funny is that I just kind of, I did that as well, at least in regard to these specific trans women.
You must be transphobic.
I must be, right. I mean, if that's their explanation for what's going on here is that, no, what's actually going on is that Aria is just transphobic and spreading anti-transgender propaganda, then something is wrong here. They need a better argument than that.
Now I'm a little confused. Is using the phrase biological female or biological male, is that like offensive? Is that transphobic? Because I think it's like a pretty legitimate way to describe somebody.
Yeah, and
right?
it's important. It's an important way to describe somebody. Like, I'm never offended when a doctor asks me, because that's information that the doctor probably needs to know in order to assess my medical history. And the same thing is true when I'm dating someone or getting to know someone I may be dating or whatever. They sort of need to know that so they can gauge whether or not they're interested in me.
I think that's an important disclaimer to make.
Yeah. I mean, maybe it could become less important after, surgeries and stuff like that, but still, I don't see anything particularly transphobic about referring to people as biological females or biologically males. It's sort of screwed up to assume that a person is just XY or XX or whatever, when what we're finding out is that there are more and more people who are like XYY or XXY or whatever. I don't remember exactly what, but biology is a thing, and it can't just be ignored because some people find it offensive. If it wasn't a thing, this is where I diverge for so many trans people, and this is why I use the phrase transsexual. And we're going to have to hold off until we get back to explain to this. I agree transgender is a thing, but transsexual is also a thing, and they have to be because gender is a thing and sex is a thing. But to them, they're just synonyms. More on this coming up, 603-283-6160.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it! You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
Breaking weather news. Belize is sunny and around 82 degrees every day this week.
What's the forecast for your life? If current politics and economic prospects are cramping your freedom, escape to the tropics. ECI Development has affordable second homes for you to own or rent in Belize and other tropical countries. Places with stable governments and growing economies. Secure your freedom now. To find out more, send an email to ftl@ecidevelopment.com.
Brute force, intransigent defiance, adamantine will. These are the hallmarks of the AI tank. These gigantic machines have the firepower of an army, but they also have their own sense of honor and duty. When the world breakers arrive, battle will be joined, planets will shake, and war and peace will never be the same again. World Breakers. Stories from David Weber, Larry Correia, and more. Available August 3rd from BaneBooks.com.
Never, ever send a follow-up email asking, "Did you get my email?" Email 101. If it didn't bounce back undeliverable, it got where you sent it. And avoid transmedia pestering, like calling to ask, "Did you get my email?" or emailing to say, "I left you a voicemail." If your emails and voicemails aren't being acknowledged, your problem isn't technology, it's technique. Is your message concise and understandable? Have you boiled it down to seem as relevant as possible to the recipient? In other words, is it the opposite of spam or junk mail? All of this really matters if you're a job seeker. But even if you're not, with money and attention so scarce now, effective communication skills have never been more important. For more tips, hit survivalspeech.com. I'm Holland Cook.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, where we regularly get kicked off of social media platforms for, quote, spreading medical misinformation. Curious to see whether or not we're going to get suspended for any of these over tonight's episode and for, spewing anti-transgender propaganda or transphobia or whatever. But one place we won't get kicked off of is our Odyssey channel. You can find it at video.freetalklive.com. It's backed by LBRY, which is a blockchain-based media sharing protocol. Odyssey is sort of like the website front end for that. It has now more than 1 million channels, many of whom are disaffected YouTube creators who are upset about not being able to actually say things that shouldn't be controversial, yet for some reason are. So we're constantly getting strikes for that, but one place we won't be censored is over on our Odyssey channel. And if you're a YouTube creator, you should definitely look into joining, because it only takes a few minutes and they will import your entire YouTube archive into LBRY, which means you can never be taken off the internet. So check out our channel at video.freetalklive.com. Subscribe over there. That's video.freetalklive.com. We're talking about this article here from the Daily Beast that you found, and you asked me an interesting question during the commercial break, and I wanted to hold off and answer it on the air. You asked whether or not a trans woman who, completely passable, unrecognizable as a trans woman who had all the surgeries, had everything, should she tell someone, a prospective dating partner, whether or not that she was trans? And my answer to that is, yes, for the same reason that if a woman couldn't have kids, was barren, and she was, out there dating people, it would be important to her, because her experience is outside the norm, to tell her date, hey, look, if you're looking for something serious, if you want to have a family or something like that, if you want to raise your own children, then I'm not the person for you, because I can't have children. And that would probably lead to a follow-up question. Okay, well, why can't you have children? And that would lead to some sort of additional explanation, such as, well, I'm trans, which is, I think, a reasonable approach. Generally, the reason people date is to enter into long-term relationships and have kids and procreate and go on to do. That's not why I do it, but that's why most people do it. And you wouldn't tell them that you can have kids, right? Because that's the counter I get to that all the time. So you think that a woman should sit down with a man at a dinner and say, oh, yes, by the way, if you want a family, I can help you out. Well, no, because that's what's normal. You don't have to explain to someone that you fall within normal parameters. But if you don't, and their expectations, you don't line up with them, you should set that record straight at least before you've entered the bedroom. Once you've gotten to that point, you've waited too late to explain to this person that, hey, look, I know that you implicitly have these expectations and I don't meet them. So that's my answer to that they should, but it's because they fall outside of that person's normal expectations of what a woman is and can be.
Seems pretty reasonable to me.
Yeah, but I know trans women who have not had surgery who think that they don't have any responsibility.
Surprise!
Yes, I know. I unfriended a...
How uncomfortable is that? If you get to that point with somebody and you assume they have one part and they have a different part, that is...
I used to have a trans friend who lived in Michigan who did exactly that. She went home with the guy, and unpleasant surprise, and she ended up getting attacked, and that's horrible. But and I'm not saying she asked for it, but she should have known better than to. If you're going to fall that far, at the very least, outside of someone's understanding of normal, then you should make sure they're aware of that longer before it reaches such points. So we're talking about this Daily Beast article here that you found, Nikki, where they're arguing that basically, if they knew what I had just said, they would be calling me transphobic as well.
They would have been calling us transphobic 2 hours ago.
Even though you're sitting here with a trans person and I'm a trans person.
Yeah, clearly I'm clearly transphobic.
Clearly I am as well. Don't let the makeup or the hair fool you or the clothing or anything.
It's all an act.
Yep. I'm clearly just doing all of this to make a mockery of legitimate trans women.
Well, you're putting a lot of effort into this joke.
Well, if I'm going to troll, I'm going to take it all the way, right?
Oh, man. So
I hate that I even said that because I do troll so often and I do stuff like that there may very well now be people who think that this whole thing is just me trolling. Oh, well.
I mean, even if they do, oh, well.
Yeah.
Whatever. So the article goes on to say the author reveals there are lesbians who don't want to have sex with transgender women yet, and they were pressured, coerced, and at least one said that they were raped. That's horrible, but Canadian jurist and bioethicist.
What is a bioethicist?
Yeah, I was like, I've never seen that word before. Bioethicist. They
study the
bio and ethics.
Yeah, they study the ethics of biology. Dude, that's
so this must be a new thing in regards to trans people?
It sounds like a liberal arts degree or a gender studies degree.
Yeah, that sounds like some gender studies stuff.
A bioethicist.
I'm going to have to just look this up really quick.
I have the word salad in front of me, so I'm going to go ahead and tell people what they said while you look that up. It's absolutely insidious to transform discussions of how cisnormativity shapes desire into claims of coercion, which play into the long-standing demonization of trans women as rapists and perverts. Now, that's not at all what the article actually said. It did cite some examples of that. It's hard to unpack their word salad, to be honest.
Yeah, it's a confusing jumble of words. It's hard to understand exactly what they're getting at.
I think what they're getting at is it's wrong to take a discussion about how expecting a lesbian to not be attracted to people who have male parts, which is cisnormativity, shapes people's attractiveness. They're arguing that a lesbian would be more attracted to trans women if society didn't create the connection between women and the body parts that women typically have.
But how can you not?
I don't know. We develop expectations based on what is normal, and I don't have any reason to... I'm not normal, and I've seen normal people. I don't want to be one of them.
Yeah. And that's a good point, to embrace not being your average woman. That's being trans is something more than being a woman, something more, but it's something different. So I don't necessarily think that as a trans woman, you need to try to be a cis woman, because you're not. You're something different, and that should be beautiful in and of itself. You don't need to try to be like all the other girls. That's kind of taking from being trans, I think.
It is, and it's kind of demanding that lesbians be willing to be attracted to you, but just speaking from personal experience here, for every one lesbian who's going to say, no, I don't want to have anything to do with you because I'm not into trans women, there's at least one other lesbian out there who considers you to be the best of both worlds. She gets the female without having to deal with the idiocy or insanity or controlling nature of men.
Yeah.
So it certainly can play to your advantage as well. But let's forget all of that, because it just gives trans people another reason to play the victim.
Yep.
This lesbian doesn't want to have anything else to do with me. She's clearly transphobic. Oh, well, yeah, but what about the lesbians who are looking at you like, hey, you're exactly what I'm looking for, because I love women, but reasons. What are your thoughts on all of this? Did you happen to find out what a bioethicist is?
Yes, it's the study of ethical issues emerging from advances in biology, medicine, and technologies. So pretty much what we said.
There's a degree for that?
Yeah, apparently.
Carl Watner, longtime proponent of a voluntary society, died last December. You may have seen his articles published on his website, voluntarist.com, in his newsletter, The Voluntarist, the Mises Institute, or elsewhere over the last 40 years. His newest book, I Must Speak Out, Volume 2, The Best of the Voluntarist, is now available via Liberty Under Attack Publications. This 430-page second volume spans the years of 2000 through 2020 and includes articles by Carl Watner, Wagner, Hans-Hermann Hoppe, Karl Hess, Benjamin Tucker, George H. Smith, Lysander Spooner, Pete Eyre, Joyce Brand, and many others. I Must Speak Out is for the newly initiated, the veteran voluntarist, or anywhere in between. Buy the book now at libertyunderattack.com/voluntarist. For more great content on building a voluntary society and for Karl's extensive archives, check out voluntarist.com.
From Feature Story News in San Francisco, I'm Ira Spitzer. Law enforcement in New Mexico have confirmed that a lead projectile is what killed Helena Hutchins on the movie set Rust. In a news conference, the Santa Fe County Sheriff said investigators believed there were other live rounds of ammunition on set, but that it is too early to know if there's enough evidence to press criminal charges. FSN's Tony Waterman has more from Austin, Texas.
Sheriff Adan Mendoza said authorities have recovered 3 firearms, including the vintage Colt pistol actor Alec Baldwin fired on set, killing cinematographer Helena Hutchins. 500 rounds of ammunition have also been confiscated, a mix of blanks, dummy rounds, and what law enforcement suspects to be live rounds. He said a lead projectile recovered from the shoulder of the film's director, Joel Souza, is what killed Hutchins. Law enforcement also believes there may have been other live rounds on set.
If the sheriff's office determines during our investigation a crime has occurred and probable cause exists, an arrest or arrests will be made and charges will be filed.
The investigation appears to now be focusing on the movie's assistant director, David Halls, who handed Baldwin the gun, and the film's armorer, Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, both of whom the sheriff mentioned by name. It's still unclear how the projectile landed in the gun in the first place. The Santa Fe District Attorney, Mary Carmack-Altwies, says the investigation is ongoing, and if the evidence and law support charges, she will initiate prosecution. Tony Waterman, Austin, Texas.
According to the Santa Fe Sheriff's Office search warrant affidavit, Rust's assistant director, Dave Halls, told investigators that he didn't check all the rounds of the gun before it was handed off to Alec Baldwin. The president of the United Nations Security Council has called for the organization to unite in its condemnation of the coup in Sudan. The member states are yet to release a joint statement on the situation. FSN's Sarah Walton reports.
The Kenyan ambassador to the UN, Martin Kimani, who currently holds the rotating presidency of the Security Council, called for the body to step up and officially condemn the military takeover in Sudan. He welcomed a move by the African Union to suspend the country from its organisation until power is handed back to civilians. Mr. Kimani said he hoped to see a similarly strong response from the Security Council. In a meeting to discuss Sudan on Wednesday, a number of member states denounced the coup and called for the release of the country's prime minister, but work on a joint statement is said to be ongoing. Sarah Walton, New York.
A recent rally on Wall Street came to an end Wednesday, with the S&P 500 coming off a record close. This comes despite the release of strong earnings reports from some major tech firms. From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live. Recently, we remodeled the entire Free Talk Live website because the podcast download system broke in addition to that, the AMP program became unable to process credit cards because of we don't exactly know why, but we suspect it had something to do with the Crypto 6. We don't really know. So we had to blow up that as well, which sent us over to Patreon, which didn't even exist when the AMP program first started. You can find it at amps.freetalklive.com. amp.freetalklive.com will also take you there. I want to say thank you to BM Simmons, who is tonight's amplifier. This means that BM Simmons is giving money to the AMP program that you can find at Patreon to advertise, market, promote, and support Free Talk Live, which is why we call it the AMP program. We added support to it as a more generalized way of supporting and helping the show grow, get on more radio stations, reach more listeners, all of that awesome stuff. It only takes $5 per month to join, and that gets you in. Among the biggest perks right now is the AMP-only podcast, which removes all of the commercials from the show, which are also not in the podcast, but the AMP podcast doesn't get the specialized podcast commercials. So not that you should join it for that reason. You should join it because you want to help advertise, market, promote, and support Free Talk Live. So check it out. BM Simmons, thank you so much for your contributions. That's amps.freetalklive.com. Now, this article that you were just talking about quoted Florence Ashley saying just this word salad of stuff that I'm still not quite sure what this person was trying to say, which prompted us to look up, who is this lunatic that spewed out this word salad? Well, this lunatic is a trans feminine jurist and bioethicist, all of which we had to look up because I didn't know what trans feminine meant. Jurist, we heard that. We thought, okay, so this person is like a juror in a courtroom?
Yeah, she has jury duty next week. Like, what?
But evidently, jurist means an expert in law, and bioethicist is exactly what you would think it is. It's someone who deals with the ethics of biology and technology and stuff. So I was curious whether or not this person, has a job, and the answer seems to be no. This trans feminine person, so Florence Ashley, it was assigned male at birth and now identifies as a female, but uses they, them pronouns, which is something I don't get, but okay. They are a doctoral student. Their doctoral project examines how science is deployed and used within the legal system to simultaneously bolster and undermine trans youth's autonomy. So this person is basically getting a degree in being a social justice warrior. Their master's thesis, written under someone else's supervision, bears on the legality of conversion practices targeting gender identity, which I'm not even sure there are any. So that's the kind of person that they're quoting over here at the Daily Beast in the article that you're found. I'm not at all surprised, based on that word salad that they just spewed, how transforming discussions of how cisnormativity shapes desire into claims of coercion. First of all, what can you use normal people words if you want to try to reason with people and persuade them? You kind of have to use language they understand. And look, I'm with you. There is a long-standing history of demonizing trans women as rapists and perverts and stuff like that. But a lot of that has subsided. And other than a few specific examples, which we can't say didn't happen because they clearly happened, the article that I read was all about the social pressure being exerted on lesbians to have sex with trans women, even though they didn't want to. And it did include some examples of trans women who used that pressure to their advantage. But that's because the pressure was there for them to use and exploit. They're exploitative people. I don't believe that those people are really trans. I suspect that they're just identifying that way as a means of weaponizing that social pressure to take whatever they want. And that needs to, the fact that some people are doing that isn't the issue near as much as it is the fact that the social pressure is there to be exploited in the first place.
Yeah, and that's exactly the problem, that these people are able to do this, and it's because of this weird society that the typical LGBTQ community has kind of created, which is sad to say because they used to have a legitimate purpose to protect the rights of gay and trans people. And I think that's a good thing. That should be happening, but it's been taken too far to the point where now it seems like trans people are getting more rights than lesbians.
It absolutely does seem that way, because let's employ any other demographic here again, and just imagine calling up someone's employer and be like, hey, I'm gay, and your employee refused to sleep with me because they're heterosexual, and they should be fired for that. The employer would be like, okay, have a good day, and hang up the phone. It would never speak of it again.
Yeah.
Because you can't fire someone for being heterosexual, for not being attracted to you, or not being willing to have relations with you for whatever reason.
But that wouldn't be how the phone call would go, though. If it would have been like, oh, this person is transphobic and they were openly discriminating against me. It wouldn't be like, oh, well, I wanted to sleep with them and they said no. It would be completely twisted around.
But the details would have to come out eventually, I would think, where they would ask the employee, hey, this person just called and made these accusations. Or, oh, yeah, I wouldn't sleep with them. Or just imagine a lesbian calling a place and be like, hey, look, your employee is really hot, and I tried to have a date with her, and she told me that she's not into lesbians.
Yeah.
You need to fire her immediately. That's not acceptable.
Yeah, everybody would be like, you sound like a total creep.
Yeah. That's not acceptable behavior. You can't pressure people into having relationships with you. That's immoral, and it's pretty cringy if it's not outright rape. If you were to go through with it, have a good day. But when suddenly the word trans is thrown in there, everything gets flipped on its head, and it's suddenly okay to do stuff like that. And it's because that societal pressure is there. You could probably get that person fired simply because they didn't want to have relations with you because you were trans.
Which is, again, cringy.
Absolutely.
So this article continues to say, the truth... Cis Bisexual and Human Resources Director Jen Kelly of Connecticut told the Daily Beast is that people have preferences. Some lesbians do not like penetration, and some, the mere idea of whatever, make them gag. Therefore, they don't have sex with people with penises, Kelly said. I honestly don't think that makes them transphobic. They simply chose not to engage in sex with persons with penises. Is that a fetish? No. It's knowing what you like/don't like and choosing to do that. It doesn't diminish another because their gender or body parts aren't what you prefer.
So this is a bisexual and human resources director who seems to agree with the article over at the BBC, saying, no, it's okay. But see, even they're using the word preference. It doesn't diminish another because their gender or body parts aren't what you prefer. No, it doesn't diminish another because they have sexual orientations. It's not a matter of preference. It's a matter of sexual orientation. So that can't be glossed over like that. It's not a matter of preference.
So-called research is introduced through a questionnaire created by an anti-trans activist group that claims 56% reported being pressured or coerced to accept trans women as a sexual partner. But in that article we just read it from BBC, they did put the disclaimer, did they not? That it was a small group?
They did.
They said,
and they also pointed out that, hey, this is a group of lesbians who, they didn't say they were transphobic or anti-trans or anything like that, but they said, hey, these are lesbians. And it was a very small group.
Yeah, so they put the disclaimer that it was a small group, and as we kind of commented afterwards, even just the fact that there were 40 or so women who had that experience, it doesn't matter if it's a small group or not. That's a large number of women to go through this experience. And, there must be more. So even though it was a small sample group, I don't think that necessarily matters.
I agree entirely. I mean, a sample size of one and one person saying that this has happened to them would be too many. Nitpicking over what the percentage is or how small the sample size is, I think you're missing the point here, author at the Daily Beast, and that's that this happens, it's a real thing, and it really doesn't matter how common it is, it needs to be dealt with. There's more coming up. It's Free Talk Live.
Free Talk Live.
It would be better if we talked about the basis of all of this as far as the legal theory.
I get the legal theory. That's the problem with people who call like this, Scott. You really sound like you know what you're talking about, but ultimately you don't have anything to prove that you know what you're talking about. And everyone who's ever tried this stuff has gone down in flames. And of course, everyone always says after that, like you're saying about your own self and your own experience, oh, well, I didn't know enough at that time. I know now. And I really don't want to hear any more about this until you actually come up with some evidence, because I'm telling you, it's bunk and it doesn't work at all because these people don't follow their own rules. Even if you have figured out from inside their own rules, even if you spent years, as you say you have, researching their ordinances and researching their statutes and how law works and the contract stuff and all of that, none of it matters because they don't follow their own rules.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealestate.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. chat.lrn.fm.
Hi, I'm Derek J. I don't want a politician to represent me. To me, government is the idea that one group of people can coerce everyone to comply with an edict or face increasing punishments up to and including death. Despite perhaps the most noble of intentions, the best government services are a far cry from what could be provided for by voluntary interactions. Besides, the people who call themselves the government wage wars and put peaceful people in jail for crimes involving no victims. If Starbucks used some of its money to drop bombs, I wouldn't shop there. So why would I support the American empire? The empire does not require my consent.
Derek J's Victimless Crime Spree. Watch it for free and order the Director's Cut DVD at victimlesscrimespree.com. That's victimlesscrimespree.com. Some of you asked, and now we've delivered. LRN.FM's live Keene, New Hampshire studio shows are now streamed in HD on Twitch. Visit our channel at twitch.lrn.fm and give it a follow. If you have Amazon Prime, you get one free subscription on Twitch. If you use it on our channel, Twitch will give LRN.FM a monthly piece of your Prime subscription cost. So please watch, follow, share, and subscribe to twitch.lrn.fm. That's twitch.lrn.fm. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. Just want to remind everyone that you can be attracted to whoever you want, and you don't have to explain it to anyone or offer anyone an explanation, and you're not any sort of phobic or anti-anything for having the attractions that you have. It's Free Talk Live with you tonight. It's Aria.
And Nikki.
And we're talking about the BBC wrote this story, bringing to light the reality that is lesbians are feeling pressured largely by society to accept sexually trans women as women, even though they're not inclined to, because this article that you brought in suggests otherwise, but the majority of trans women are still operating with the parts that they had from birth. That's been my experience, having been dating trans women for many, many years. So I can't blame a lesbian for not being interested in that, in the same way that I can't blame a heterosexual man for not being interested in another man. That's just their sexual orientation, and that's okay. Apparently, saying that is transphobic, though.
So this article comes at a time when transphobia is running rampant and unchecked among British's mainstream media. If anyone criticizes it, they are accused of silencing or attempting to cancel the bullies who hold sway. The same bullies who claim to be silenced when they in fact have access to major media platforms to spread their malicious misinformation, exacerbating an already ugly atmosphere, influencing policy making as well as public perception against trans people. Now, that was a really long sentence.
It was. And I don't know what the situation is like in Britain, But I know in the United States, transphobia is certainly far from rampant and unchecked in the media. And the trans community, the LGBTQ alliance is so powerful here in the United States that there's a realistic chance that they could have canceled Dave Chappelle, the guy who brought us Clayton Bigsby, the black, white, blind, race, white supremacist. I mean, Dave Chappelle has done a lot of stuff that you would think, oh my God, this is going to destroy his career. He'll never recover from this. Well, the one thing that almost actually got him was the power of the trans, I don't know what I want to call it. It's not a community. It's more like an army.
Yeah.
And they exert immense social pressure to be treated as normal women, to get whatever they want. Whatever it is that they want, they have a massive amount of social pressure to help them get it. And there are some people who see that social pressure and who would use it and exploit it for their own benefit. I don't know what's going on in Britain, though, but I know here in the United States, the trans army is far from weak. And if someone were to sound transphobic, I mean, even Donald Trump, when running for president, was like, yeah, no, anyone can come to any of my casinos or hotels or whatever and use whatever bathroom they want.
Wow, I didn't know that.
He did.
Yeah.
And then Caitlyn Jenner, who is one of the worst trans people on the planet, made this huge show about going to one of his hotels to use the women's restroom because she wants to be like the Rosa Parks of the trans, quote, movement, right? But if she really wanted to do that, she would have gone to South Carolina, which had recently passed a law making it illegal for someone to use a bathroom other than their what was listed on their birth certificate. If she wanted to go to South Carolina and use a women's bathroom, I would have had a bit of respect for her. But going to a place where she knew, where the owner of the property had already said she wouldn't be troubled, you're not Rosa Parks, lady. You're a Kardashian at this point. You're trolling for Instagram likes. And I just can't respect that. So we've since learned that this article is actually bullet pointed. I thought they were just dots on a screen. But this author goes through and dissects part of the BBC's article. And that's why it seems to jump around a bit.
Yeah, it makes so much more sense now. This BBC article is just the latest biased and factually inaccurate story about transgender people to appear in British mainstream media, a spokesperson for GLAAD told the Daily Beast.
Okay. Even if we accept that it's biased, how is it factually inaccurate?
And that's the thing, too. So we're telling these women that their experiences are false. So basically, that's just as bad as telling someone that they didn't get raped or that they asked for it.
It absolutely is. They don't provide any examples here of why it's factually inaccurate.
Because most of that original BBC article was trans and lesbian women giving their personal account. So to say that that is factually inaccurate is saying that those women are either liars or that their experience is wrong. You know, I don't get how that could be. It's frankly bad journalism to have a reporter and news outlet reinforce lies and spread hate about a group of people that is already profoundly marginalized.
Okay, I will get with you, Glad. You just have to tell me what lies they spread.
Yes. Be more specific, please.
You can't just say they're lying. Well, they quoted people's personal experiences, and that would mean that those people were lying about their personal experiences. And if you can prove that, or you can even give me any evidence of that, I will consider your position. But you can't just go, they're lying, and expect me to take you seriously. No matter how biased they are, they can still be factually correct, just coming to the wrong conclusions.
Personal experience is personal experience.
Absolutely.
Mainstream media in the UK should immediately give transgender people and their allies platforms to share stories about what it really means to be a trans person in the UK today.
That's not a news story. No one would read that.
So basically,
even other trans people wouldn't.
So they're just saying that they're demanding that trans people be granted special platforms and special privileges, basically?
Yeah, to talk about how oppressed they are and how bad it really is in the United Kingdom, the West. I mean, come on.
The idea that trans women need to pressure anyone into sex is so laughably absurd, tweeted actor, producer, and activist Jen Richards, who happens to be trans. Don't fall for stupid, written, with little to no basis in lived experience by people who want to erase trans people from public life. I do not understand what she's trying to say there.
Don't fall for the op-eds written. That's a good...
Anyways.
Anyway, they say it has no basis in lived experience, but the op-ed cited many examples of people encountering this, of lesbians encountering this.
Trans people.
Yeah, don't erase lesbians from public life in your efforts to make trans people part of public life.
Exactly.
People have to be able to coexist here, and this hardline position that, no, you're trying to erase trans people. That's not coexistence.
And let's be real here. If trans people are marginalized, aren't lesbians too?
They are. This is what the entire Dave Chappelle special was about. Now trans people are going to be telling lesbians, stop punching down at us. No, they're not punching they're not punching down. You're punching sideways. You've been convinced to fight each other instead of working together because you're morons who are cannibals and who are so eager to be the one at the center of attention that you don't care if you have to beat a lesbian over the head in order to put yourself in their place so that everyone pays attention to you. You just can't stand for someone else to be the center of attention.
No person is ever obligated to be attracted to another person. That completely goes against the concept of autonomy and consent that is so central to the trans and non-binary community. That is a quote from Charlotte Clymer. And I'm unsure as if that is from the BBC article or this one.
It seems like it was someone talking to the Daily Beast, saying, I don't know any trans or non-binary person, let alone any activist who would claim that cis lesbians are obligated to be attracted to trans women. I would go even further and say that trans women lesbians aren't obligated to be attracted to trans women. No one's obligated to be attracted to anyone. But I will tell you this, those people do certainly exist.
That's a great point, too. So if someone's a trans female with a preference for biological females, are they transphobic, too? I mean...
They would probably argue yes, but I would
But they're literally
argue,
a trans person.
I would obviously argue no,
Yeah.
because, again, it's a matter of sexual orientation, not a matter of preference. They don't seem to ever get that. Saying this is not a new topic... No, it is kind of a new topic. This is something I've never heard really talked about. And the fact that this website has gone out of their way to sort of dispute the article without disputing any of the facts. They're just saying, oh no, they're lying. They're biased. They're incorrect. Well, they're quoting life stories of people, and those things, their life stories are worth talking about. And we have to stop trying to push each other out of the limelight so that we can take it for ourselves, because that's not going to get any of your silly little backstabbing communities anywhere. It's been Free Talk Live. Find us in the meantime at chat.freetalklive.com.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any